welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. I'm your host. My name is Brian Vitale. We've got the usual crew here today. We have Josh Torres.
The original Avengers are here, not the new Avengers from last weekend.
Mikhail Madnani.
Switch 2 edition.
Adam Vitale.
Hello.
James Glizio.
Hey, folks.
And Chaman Wu.
Cloud edition.
Yeah, if you listened to the podcast last week, it was right smack dab in the middle of everything going on in Summer Games Fest and all of the ancillary events going on around Summer Games Fest. Adam, Josh, and James were all in LA covering the event for us. We also had a few other people on the site, such as Alex Donaldson and Scott White were also in the area. Chow, Mikhail, and I, as well as a few others like Junior, Nathan, and Cullen, all kind of stepped in to cover all the news we had available at the time, but it was only partially through the events. So we have basically, this is going to be, if that was pre-Summer Games Fest, during Summer Games Fest, this podcast is going to be focused on post-Summer Games Fest, including, of course, the guys' trip out to LA, what they saw, what they played, who they met. Just their experience of the event, LA over that weekend. We can talk about that, to what extent that played a role in your guys' trip out there. Obviously, all the things that showed up at Xbox, at PC Gamer, all the other ones that were late later in the show. And then, of course, everything coming out of that, the previews that were written up on the site for the games that we saw, the hands-on demos, the hands-off demos, all the new dates. All of a sudden, September and October are very packed, all that sort of stuff. So that's going to be kind of the focus of this week's episode of the podcast. It's going to be mostly news focused, recapping the visit, the events, and things like that. And then next week we'll go back into the normal cadence of going through recent releases and, of course, covering the new news as it comes out. So without further ado, then I'm going to just pick at random one of the three that went out there, and then of course you three can then bounce back and forth about what you saw in your trip and all of that. I'll hand it off to Adam to start out. I think this was your second time to Summer Games Fest. Just talk about, at first let's go high level, just the trip, the event, the experience, the vibes, and then we can go into details about specific games or publishers or things like that. So go take it away about your trip to LA.
Yeah, so this is my second time going to Summer Game Fest. It was, in terms of the media, in terms of the publisher presence and the media presence there, it felt a little bit lower key than last year. Not as many presenters there and whatnot, but still pretty similar vibes throughout, at least to start. In terms of probably the biggest publishers there, at least relevant to us, were like Capcom and Bandai Namco. And just to be clear, for those who haven't gone to these events, this isn't like E3. This isn't held in a convention center or anything like that. It's basically in this sort of kind of rec space block in the middle of downtown LA is basically where it's at, where different publishers, kind of occupy different buildings or tents to show off their games and whatnot there. And, we had a few things that we at RPG Site were, of course, cluing in on, and some of those, actually several of those previews have gone out already, with a few more to go. For example, we saw Onimusha at Capcom. They had a demo there, and I believe Josh wrote up a preview for that. Not hands-on, but just kind of we got to see what type of game that was like. We got to see some gameplay for that. We got to play Pragmata. We got to see Resident Evil. Obviously, doesn't matter for our site, but we got to see kind of a showcase for that. A lot of indie games. If you look at the previews on our site, bunch of impressions and just kind of hands-on thoughts there. Some of them coinciding with the Steam Next Fest that's going on right now. But yeah, it's basically like a long weekend in LA where a lot of publishers and media from all over the US and all over the world just kind of congregate around a certain block for a weekend. And it's nice to see, people that we've emailed with or chatted with or work with that we don't get to see in person very often. When's the last time I've seen Josh? 5 years ago?
Wow. Yeah,
So-
it's on one of the last E3s that we saw each other, I think.
Yeah, so that's nice. The games are cool, but the people are cooler, right? So
Of course. Yeah. That was my impression as well. Hey, checking out it was nice checking out the games, but it's even cooler checking out both our peers in this like games journalism industry, especially as we obviously chatted about like the really tremendously tough times around like all the layoffs across the industry, not only just for journalism but also for the game industry as well. So getting to meet with developers and publishers and PR, either reuniting with them or meeting them for the first time. Either way, it's always nice to put a face to a name, and getting to chat about what they're showing off and how they've been, because we're kind of all in this together. We're all dependent on each other for our for our jobs to function pretty much. If we don't have much to, if let's say RPG developers and publishers like just diminished like by 90%, then we don't really have nothing left, for our side to function, so we kind of are all in this together and seeing, trying to uplift each other, and at the same time just seeing what they have in store and seeing all these games in development and all the cool stuff that been showing. It was cool. It was cool. I really enjoyed it. It was my first time there. So, as Adam mentioned, this Summer Games Fest doesn't take place in the LA Convention Center like E3. It's in my mind, like I didn't know what to expect, but as you mentioned, Adam, it's kind of in when I went there and saw it, I kind of related to like an outside strip mall almost type of environment where it's kind of takes place in this block, and like each individual like publisher or like or developer has like a sort of devoted building or space in that strip mall, but some of them are like the HQ SGF HQ building, which just houses like a bunch of like indie game demo setups, like in this like like this main lobby space hall that's almost like when you're going around a convention center, but much more smaller than like what we're used to at the convention center at E3. So it was like it was nice to not have to rush to like appointments. Like everything was relatively close to each other, unlike E3 sometimes. And the big thing that people there, whether they were there for the first time or it's been their second or third year there, the common consensus is like the big difference between this and E3, aside from like environment, is you just have relatively more time to chat with people. You're not like rushing to appointment, just like saying like hi, bye, and then there's like a 30% chance you'll see that person again. You saw people regularly, and you got to really just get time to chat with them and see what's up. So that's kind of the nice thing about SGF compared to how E3 was in my memory. Of just like, hey, you have more time to say, just stop and like maybe take 3 to 5 minutes to chat with each other. On like E3, it's like 10 to 15 seconds at most, as you're passing each other by. But it was great. Yeah, that's kind of my overall just first impressions going to SGF. I really enjoyed it there. But as you mentioned, Brian, it obviously it felt fulfilling in terms of like coverage for the site, but obviously in the greater context of like what happened in downtown LA, and not just it's not an isolated event that's ongoing, right? With the whole just the president of the United States, bringing ICE into there due to certain events, escalating the situation, leading to peaceful protests, and just unjustifiably, escalating tensions by, there was some talk of the National Guard coming in, now the Marines. It's not great, like in terms of like, and you're trying to think about attending that event and the overall circumstances that the United States finds itself in, which is like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place where like I wish I could do more to show support for the peaceful protest, but at the same time I'm there to also do things for the site
And
too.
watching from the fringes, it's kind of a tricky, and I don't know like where my emotions sat because you follow on social media and like here's a post about a Summer Games Fest preview, and then right next is a post about an ongoing protest, and obviously like a bunch of thoughts at the same time. A, I hope everyone's safe, both the people I know and the people I don't know.
Right.
B, when we're sitting here talking to a podcast about video games, I'm like, is this like it's okay to still do this, right? And the answer is of course yes, but it almost feels like, you can understand where that guilt kind of comes from, where it's like one of these things is more important than the other, but also, it's good to celebrate the little normalcy we could hold on to potentially. It was very tricky, but of course, just to reel it back in, you guys all obviously felt safe the whole time. I just want to make sure like it didn't impact your visit, or it
It
did.
wasn't in
It's hard to put into words.
like in the place where like most of the protesting was going on is a different part of LA, but there was certainly a time in like the middle of the day where we saw smoke up in the air, and apparently we learned later like that was from a Waymo that was being burned from the protests, you know. So, but at the time we just like saw smoke in the air, like so what is going on, you know?
Mm.
But I know some of our peers there that stayed in hotels where they had like the protests swing on by. Nothing bad happened or anything. Like I said, 99% of these protests were peaceful from what I read and from what I saw from people sharing their experiences with it. So like no one was harmed or anything at it. I think that of course the protests are, they mean well. They are concerned about the health of the country. Um, and yeah, I mean it's just one of those things that like it was kind of like a time and place coincidence type of thing. Like, well,
Yeah.
this happening this weekend, and of course, it is still happening at this very moment. And obviously, all our love and support for the people out there. Just doing what they can to show like that they don't agree with the direction of this country. Um, and we just pray that that everyone is safe and sound. Is able to return to their families at the end of the day.
James, of course, you're from Southern California, so for you, this is a little bit more of a local-ish event. But you've been, through E3s, past SGS, Anime Expo,
Yep.
so maybe you can kind of provide some context about how this compares to your other experiences. Of course, both in
It
terms
was
of the
very
gaming scene and the ongoing other events. Go ahead.
it was a very besides the protest stuff as the backdrop, I would say the Summer Game Fest was very quiet to the point that really the only major games that were there were Capcom and Bandai Namco games. Um, it was nice. I mean, it was still a good time, but it was definitely like compared to Summer Game Fest last year and the year before. Like, and I'm sure Adam can even agree that it was just like it was noticeably quieter, except for the protests, which I don't want to talk about it too much because a few days ago, a buddy of mine got kettled and booked at a protest. He was literally just with a number of other people handing out water and like documenting the protests themselves on video. And it just complete like illegal arrests. Nobody got read their Miranda rights. It's just, I mean, I don't think it's really a surprise for someone from LA to say that LAPD is full of assholes, but yeah, that's still true.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning that a lot of our peers in this industry are either immigrants themselves or like first generations immigrants, and like I heard kind of it's very complex like emotionally, but I heard people refer to like the Summer Game Fest area itself kind of like a sanctuary, because like we are all there for the same reason, we're all like-minded, and we all trust each other and believe in each other, and we're literally in it together, like Josh was saying. But like as soon as you step outside of that block, especially if you're not white, like I can't even imagine the concern and the uncertainty, right? And in fact, I want to point out a piece written by Janet Garcia. She does MinMax and a few other podcasts. She wrote on Pen to Pixels, basically her experience at Summer Game Fest as a first generation. Like her dad was like a Mexican immigrant, and basically like what that was like. Because it's like I'm not the right person to speak to this, right? So read her thoughts on it. Just trying to do
Yeah,
this in that environment.
I'll be fully transparent on this. Like, I'm an immigrant myself. I was born in the Philippines. I immigrated to the United States. We eventually got my citizenship here, like several many years ago at this. But it's it's really crazy because because of like the what was going on in downtown LA this weekend. There were this is probably the first time that James and Adam is hearing this, but every night that they of the SGF, people would usually, after the event was done at the main site, people would usually go to the JW hotel to go gather up. Like that's where people to kind of just drift in to go chat at the night, until people were ready and tired to go back to their hotels and rest for the next day. Um, James and Adam usually went every night. I usually just didn't go with them. One was because I had another business thing going on for one of the nights, and the other nights, it was 70% like I'm not a night person. I'm kind of like I'm a early to bed, early to rise type of person, and I kind of like to keep that up. But a good you know part of that reason was because James and Adam are both white. I don't look white. I'm not white. I'm a Filipino, and I just didn't know where law enforcement was gonna be at certain times of the night, and I didn't want to be put in a situation. I didn't want to put myself and James and Adam in a situation where potentially the wrong person sees me and gets the wrong impression, and then we'd have a situation. And I just kind of wanted to bypass that altogether and just decided I won't go out and even risk it at all. So that I gave them the reason. I was like, I was tired for the most part, but also because I just didn't want to get into that situation at all. It was just kind of a weird thing to consider when you think about the context of everything that's happened, because I've never had to think about that until that moment. I'm like, damn, that's really really crazy that I have to like entertain that thought.
And I'm totally happy to hear that obviously you did what you felt was safest for you. And of course, you all returned safely. And for those listening to this podcast, it's, the events were literally on top of each other. And like Janet's little op-ed over at Pentapixels, like you can't really decouple them. You can't just say, well, we'll only talk about the one part, but not the other part. It's like, well, they were on top of each other, happening at the same time. You had to balance those thoughts in your head at the moment simultaneously. So glad that you made it out safe. Glad that you kept yourself as safe as you could and did what you're most comfortable with while you were there. And of course, hopefully that everyone, both that we sent as representatives of RPG site as well as all of our other peers, made it back safely. With that, we can kind of go into specific things that you saw. Of course, from our perspective here, me, Mikkel, and Chow, over on the fringes here at home. The big events that we didn't talk about in last week's podcast were, of course, the Xbox showcase, which had a fair number of interesting things, but you didn't bring up Microsoft as like a strong presence there. So was everything there just a digital event, or did they have any presence in the area for Microsoft?
Microsoft was technically not at Summer Game Fest. They were just also in LA.
That's what they do for E3 too, or what they did.
Yeah, and also I think they called it behind closed doors access to Microsoft was much more limited. Some people did get to go hands on with like the new handheld ROG Ally thing that they showed, but otherwise they weren't like none of us here on the cast got to see anything with them besides what you watched on the stream.
Mm-hmm.
All we heard was some murmurs of like some people, who got to check out the handheld, and that's about it from my end. Just interesting, but definitely, we didn't get to see it ourselves. But I will say though that we got a lot of free food. That was my first SGF, and I was like, holy crap, there's so much free food.
There was more free food this year than last year.
Yeah, so I guess apparently in past years there's like they had the standard meal vouchers that they gave out for food trucks, but then there's like additional sources of free food outside of those meal vouchers. So like the one there's like an additional like stand by the food trucks that just gave out free ice cream every day, and there's like some I think a local ice cream shop that was like advertising their stuff, and it was like sponsored by PC Gamer or something. That had like the ice cream was pretty good because they had like some Ireland toffee thing that they sprinkled on top of it, and it was like, man, like James even mentions like, fuck, I think I gained a few pounds because we had it every day. I'm like, yeah. We were
Too much ice cream.
You can't say no to free ice cream. That's the hard
No.
part.
I have a hard time saying no to paid ice cream.
And then the media lounge area, along with like a few other shops around the media lounge area. I guess the new location of the media lounge at SGF, like they also serve like free breakfast at certain hours and like a free lunch as well that you didn't need media vouchers for at all. So it's just like additional free food on top of free food that you could spend a meal voucher on that you got for free anyway. So it was pretty easy to just like not spend anything on food at all for the whole day. It was crazy.
Yep.
Um, I enjoyed that aspect of it, which is maybe besides the point. But I was like, yeah, you know what? The most one of the most memorable parts about that whole event was like how easy it was to just kind of feed yourself and not spend a cent the whole day. Crazy.
Oh,
I
was
mean,
the food
that's totally
good though?
valid.
What's that, Chow?
Is the food good at least?
Yes, the
Yeah.
food was delicious. Yes, there was a particular like Asian food truck and an American food truck that had like really good food. I didn't get to try the Mediterranean food truck because they had really lengthy times. So like after you ordered food, which
They
I
were
heard it was
good.
still good. I heard it was still good, but I just didn't want to deal with the wait. And then the free breakfast, the free lunch stuff was all delicious as well. Nothing felt cheap at all. They were all excellent.
So when did you guys like show up? Did you arrive Thursday morning? I'm trying to like parse when you guys first showed up versus like when the event happened because the big streaming event was Friday, I believe.
Yeah,
They're all kind of blending together to me.
I think we all showed up on Thursday, the day before, and then
Yeah, same
Friday.
event.
Friday, the play days area hadn't really opened yet, but there was the big stream that we could have gone to, but we just kind of decided to watch it.
we watched it at a pretty awesome place. We were at like at the second floor of our hotel at the lounge area that like no one was occupying. So we just kind of like commandeered their big TV, which is weird because it was frustrating because their big TV that had like the YouTube app. I don't know how out of date it was or like if it was like a weird guest account thing. But the maximum resolution supported on that big ass TV was 480p, and I'm
Oof.
like. God damn it. On top of it already being like 20 seconds behind like the mainstream and everything. So like we had that on the background and then I had my laptop playing the stream as well. And then all three of us were just like circling around this table in front of that TV and then like obviously helping out with new stuff as the event was going and after it. It was a great time, but yeah, we definitely just chilled out at that second floor like lounge area at the hotel. Shit.
I will say, if you've listened to our last week's podcast, our impressions, and it seems like the general impressions of the first actual s- Summer Games Fest, like actual stage show. I don't know what you call it. Summer Games Fest Live. Whereas
That's what they call it, yeah.
lukewarm at best. It was a just in terms of purview for our site, not a lot of overlap, but just in general, vibes were weird. A lot of things that were shown just didn't feel like they fit the moment. And I'm not just saying like, oh, it wasn't hype enough, but it just lots of weird vibes in terms of the presentation, in terms of the pacing, in terms of it kind of just in general. It seems like a lot of the other news that has come out during and since then around this time has been a lot more interesting. We're getting actually to sit down with developers, talk, people showing their, presentations in a more direct style manner. A lot of that has been a lot more fun to talk about, just honestly. But in terms of like, what did you think about the stage show? My impression is that you didn't miss much by not going in person.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, and I'm sure you guys talked about it last podcast. Like even when we were watching it, I guess in person near the event, um, not at the event itself, but like it just like even our just like local area, like a lot of people that we talked to about it, like you're just like, yeah, it just kind of felt off because there's like just a lot of like it felt like weird messaging, because of say like the when you talk about games and the amount of developers it takes to make a game, and you have that
Yeah,
kind of narrative with like Clear Obscure earlier this year, and that being pushed on the stream itself, saying, "Hey, only the 30 devs made this game." It's like, no, absolutely not. There's a hell of a lot more people involved in this. It wasn't just like like one person and 29 of their friends. Um,
yeah, we talked slightly about that last week, and yeah, just Junior especially was feeling pretty down, and like kind
mhm.
of in a justifiable fashion. He was
Yeah, yeah,
just like,
yeah.
This made me like question whether I enjoy video games, but luckily there was other stuff that I was like, oh yeah, I still do,
Yeah,
just not this way,
yeah,
just not this way to present it.
yeah.
So on a happier note, like I guess once that was over and you're going into Saturday and the play area is like open, like maybe I'll go over to James. Like what was the first big, well, I shouldn't say first. Let's say what was the most interesting thing, like game, whether a hands-on demo, sit down with a dev, or anything that you got to experience at Summer Games Fest.
I think I can speak for most of the people that were at Summer Game Fest that was probably Pragmata.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So tee me up because I saw that first of all, we have a lot of previews up on the site written for different games, hands on, hands off, from U3, from Scott. Uh, and you did write about Pragmata as well, but this is a game that I saw that you wrote it as a branching path. But I saw that a lot of people were like, "Oh, finally, this is worth the wait." You know, it's been kind of where is it for a long time. So yeah, tee me up on Pragmata and what you saw.
Um, so it's kind of hard to explain it, but I figured out the way to kind of crystallize what makes Pragmata unique. Imagine you took a third-person shooter that's sci-fi like Vanquish, has the sort of like puzzles and platforming that you might see in, say, like maybe not platforming in Resident Evil, but sort of like that style progression of like moving through the world. And then it had combat that could best be described as what if you were doing The World Ends With You, but as a third-person shooter.
Yeah. As you described in your article, and as many people try to describe this game, like and like putting this game, how this game works in text is definitely challenging because it is a third person shooter, sci-fi third person shooter. Except the little girl android, I don't know, the hacker thing. You learn very fast is that your typical approach in other third person shooters of like if you just like shoot at the head or shoot at the weak point like won't work because your guns basically do no damage. You have like damage values that pop up damage numbers when you shoot at an enemy. And the one of the very first things it teaches you is like, hey, doing this alone won't damage enemies. It's very, very minimal damage. You have to let this girl hack it first, and in real time, as you're hacking an enemy, you'll see this 4x4 like grid, and you're guiding this like cursor towards a highlighted green node on that 4x4 grid. So you manipulate that through the face buttons. As you're moving with the left analog stick and holding down L2, you're manipulating that mini game with the face buttons on a PlayStation controller or Xbox controller. And
Um, Sorry,
what's
I was
that?
just saying, is it like 9S hacking, but not quite?
A little. I've definitely heard about that. Like
I
people comparing it. It's
Yeah.
a tiny
I
bit, tiny
yeah,
bit.
the reason I compared it to The World Ends With You is you're doing that where you're also moving the character to avoid
Yeah,
enemies. So it's like
right.
it's really the closest analog I can think of.
Yeah. So as you're doing this like this puzzle grid puzzle, you can go to that highlighted green node immediately. There's like it's a pretty open space for the most part, but once you get there, it'll turn the enemy that you're facing into an open state, and that open state is sort of like an ailment that says, "Hey, you can now do damage with your guns. Your guns will do a lot of damage now. They'll damage you normally." So if you go to that green node right away on this grid, that open state will only stay active for only a short amount of time. But there are other optional nodes on that 4x4 grid that you can pass through to lengthen the amount of time that that enemy stays in open state. So you're basically picking up optional things on that mini game in real time to say, hey, keep them, from taking normal damage even longer instead of like just a short amount of time. They do mix it up, and they do the way that they've mix it up is one throughout like near the end of that small demo, you get a consumable, and of course, James mentioned this as well that where you can do a defense debuff on an enemy, and that's a consumable. And the way you use consumables is that consumable is now part of that mini game, so you can now have the option to go through that node on the mini game to inflict the debuff when you hack and do the open state on an enemy uh, on that. And that's the way they mix it up, and that's very RPG-esque in terms of like, hey, there's damage values, and you can do defense debuffs to get obviously do more damage. So
And
we
we
don't
know
know.
there's equipment upgrades of some kind.
Yeah, we
but
don't
we
know
don't
exactly
know
how
what
RPG.
they do.
Yeah. So there's a very big teaser because they stopped us right before the boss battle. It's like but it is a very
they knew it
interesting
too
game.
because it's
Yep.
like you could very obviously tell that it was a boss arena. I was like, okay, better prepare for it. And then I could just hear them like kind of snickering behind me. I was like, that's odd. I wonder what that's about. And then the moment the boss cutscene ended, they're like, hey, you're done. It's like,
Yeah, that's a really cool, like, interesting game. And like you and Adam mentioned at SGF, like Capcom is consistently one of the big publisher and developer presences there at SGF that always showcases like really unconventional new IP stuff that like they don't just rely on their big tentpole franchises, but they're willing to like, hey, check out this new thing that we're working on that's not part of any of the series that like us, which is rad. Mikhail, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm just curious. You brought up like, this is not one of their normal, like their top three IP, which is like Monster Hunter, Resident Evil, Street Fighter, which everyone knows them. Do you think they're going to give this like a full retail release and it's going to be like one of their main major games for next year?
yes.
Or is it going to be like a Konitsugami type thing where they treat it kind of low key, I guess, even though I love that game, but yeah.
I think it has enough wide appeal where they'll give it a physical release.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, hopefully they do. Yeah, they haven't said anything for sure, but it feels larger scope than Kunitsugami. And not to say that Kunitsugami is bad or anything, but I feel like this game feels larger scope than that.
Yeah.
To the point that they might consider giving it a retail release. It is definitely, one of the things consistently from SGF attendees and all three of us here were like, man, that's a really cool thing that they've got there, and it's glad to see that it's coming together because it was like in development hell for so long,
Adam, what was a really interesting thing that you either got to play or see or speak to at SGF?
I guess one game that we checked out was Crimson Desert, and we talked about this on the podcast probably. Okay, Crimson Desert. It was announced 6 years ago at one of these events. I forget. It's shown up at like Gamescom and various events and G Star and whatnot. It's from the developers behind Black Desert, and basically at this point I was a little bit uncertain, like what type of game is this, because it was announced as an MMORPG, which wasn't too surprising because it's like, okay, these are the Black
That's
Desert
what Black
guys,
Desert is,
right?
yeah.
And this is Crimson Desert, which is honestly a little bit of a silly name if it's just like the new one, right? But then it kind of disappeared for a while, it came back, and then they called it an adventure game with content for both single player and multiplayer, which that alone is a little bit weird, but I also don't blame them for kind of avoiding the MMORPG like label, because I think there is a connotation there that some people are like just don't care about MMORPGs, even if there is like single player content. So they're just like, no, it's a single player and multiplayer game. But then it disappeared again, reappeared again. I think this is now Gamescom 2023, and they called it an open world action adventure game. And it's just like, okay, what is this game? It shows up here and there over the course of half a decade or more. And I know there's been other opportunities to play it, but we just hadn't had much chance to. So finally, I get to sit down and play it. It is a single player game. I guess there was multiplayer MMO stuff at one point, but it's no longer there. The Pearl Abyss, that's the developer, spokesperson at the demo, basically said it's single player, it's an adventure game. Of course, we told them, hey, we're RPG site, so we play RPG games. And they said, of course, there's some RPG elements to it, like there's equipment and things like that, but they hesitate to call it an RPG because there doesn't have, to their perspective, a lot of RPG elements, just a few. It's like, okay, open world adventure game, single player. The demo itself, basically the short of it is that Pearl Abyss is really proud about their scale, about the scale of the game. I start up the demo, and after a very quick introduction where your main character is a gray main. I don't know what a gray main is, but that's what you are. And you're trying to find another gray main but they are in like this big battlefield, and you're trying to find them, and you're basically thrust right into this battlefield, and it's chaotic. It's hell. There's basically, you have like a dozen NPCs that are your allies versus hundreds of enemies all over the place. Josh was there. It was kind of chaotic, right?
Yeah, and, as you said, go on.
But yeah, so basically the main thing with Crimson Desert that sets it apart from other like games that look the same is that it doesn't just use heavy attack, light attack, special attack, or something like that, right? It actually, they say the combat system in that game is most similar to fighting games, where you actually have to input buttons at certain times in certain orders with certain timings sometimes to do combos. And you can basically, if you have the muscle memory and if you're timing your inputs well and properly, you can do lots of cool things with the combo focused controls that this game uses. Like for example, if you press L1 and R1 at the same time, you do like this sort of sword flash that can stun enemies. If you press R1 and R2 at the same time, you can do a powerful kind of downswing attack. There's different combinations of face buttons that do various things. While I learned some of these abilities, I will admit, in the heat of a demo and coming in cold, I was kind of just button mashing a little bit.
Sorry, I just like to emphasize, like, they had like a little like controller card in front of you when you were playing this demo, Adam, and like there was like 4 to 5 like different button combinations with like with the controller drawing on it, and like I could see you being like feeling overwhelmed because it's like a demo, and then they're asking you, hey, you can like use like these 5 different button combinations if you want, like but they can only be done like at certain times of the string, combo string, for example. Just to emphasize like what the setup looked like for people who were there.
Yeah, so I assume going into this game, naturally, it's going to ease you into these sorts of things. But basically, the demo is just like, here you go, have fun. It's just like, oh, I have all these different, combinations I can do. At one point, I like vaulted off of one guy and speared into another, like in midair. I'm like, I don't know how I did that. I was just button mashing. You can do like wrestling moves and like pile drivers also.
Yeah, those are rad.
So it's different. And I've actually have seen a few editorials basically say this is clumsy. I'm not going that far yet. I felt clumsy, but it kind of feels like a fighting game where it's you have to practice a little bit to know how to play it and what you're capable of. So it's kind of interesting in that regard. But also in like the larger structure of this demo, I'm in this big battlefield. I'm trying to find this other person, and I'm also trying to take out towers. But all the while you're doing that, you have like literally dozens of enemies coming your way, trying to kill you, and they're pretty deadly. And the presenter, the spokesperson from Pearl Abyss there even basically said a lot of people have this inclination to defeat every enemy that comes your way, get rid of them, but you don't really want to do that here because I don't know if they're actually endless, but there's just a ton of enemies. If you were to spend all your time taking out everyone that's coming at you, it's going to be kind of boring, actually. You're just going to be fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. So really what you're supposed to do, and I kind of learned this, was take out the enemies that are in your way, run past the enemies you don't need to fight to your objective. But I kind of overcorrected, and I just started running past everyone. Like, I got to get to my objective and just run past everyone. And then I look behind me, and there's literally like 20 dudes going, "Rah!" They're trying to chase me down.
Horde of enemies, like, like I have to emphasize, like these are like hyper aggressive enemy AI. Like if you're knocked to the ground, you have no invincibility during knockdown. People will like maul you as you're on the ground trying to get up, and you're just taking damage. Like Mikhail, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so when Adam was describing it, I think he mentioned something in the chat, or maybe in the work chat, or maybe I read the preview and I watched the new trailer which they uploaded a few days ago. It looks like massive in scope, and I see why they keep focusing on that. And the fighting game combo thing sounds interesting, but I there's something which I missed until earlier today, that apparently this game was listed on GameStop's website for Switch 2. And I'm just thinking, like, surely the demo they showed was like on some high-end PC to like with show everything as good as it can look. I'm just curious how this would even scale on consoles. Like, forget Switch 2, like just PS5 and Xbox, because they also announced that they're optimizing it for like Apple hardware and like Macs now with M3, M4 chips and stuff. So, what do you think of that?
The scale was impressive, and they even talked about how all the destruction that's happening isn't just like canned animations, it's real-time physics. So, for example, when a tower falls over, it's not just like play the tower animation falling over. It's literally, parts of the tower are falling and the physics will dictate how it collapses, right? And so they were talking about that sort of stuff. I do think some of the textures and the models themselves were more average, like especially like character faces, character clothing, and things like that. It wasn't bad. Don't get me wrong, but that didn't seem like especially impressive to me relative to other like high definition modern games. So maybe Switch 2 is fine in that regard, but I don't know the processing power in terms of like doing all these calculations for the physics and all the NPCs, all the enemies, and that's a little bit more. I'm not sure if that's going to basically take too much computing power for the Switch to handle. I don't know, but anyways, so I'm not sold on this game yet, but it definitely is doing things a little bit different that I'm interested in. It's not an RPG, so it does feel like you're kind of wasting time when it's like, ugh, stop attacking me, you stupid enemies. I'm going to take you out and kill you, but I don't really get anything for killing you. If it's an RPG, you're like, okay, I'm just going to slowly rack up some experience or points or something, right? But here, there's literally, they're just getting in the way of your objective, and you're just like, go away, get out of here. And there's just a lot of them, and it's a little bit frustrating. But also, some of the controls for some like contextual things seem like they should be way more intuitive than they are. So, first of all, your main character apparently has some sort of telekinesis power. I don't know why, but you do. And there's like this part where it's like, oh, we have to put this flag back in its pedestal, like a giant flag, not just like a little flag you can hold in your hand, but like a giant, 2-foot round pole, 30-foot flagstaff, right? And it's like, all right, we need to put that flag back in its pedestal. And here I'm thinking, oh, you probably go up to it, press a button to pick it up, walk over to the pedestal, press another button, set it down, right? Nope, not that's not it. What you have to do is you have to go to the pedestal or go to the flag that's fallen over, and you have to press L3 and R3 at the same time to enter your telekinesis mode. And then you have to make sure your camera is looking at the fallen flagstaff, and you have to be looking at it just right to get the contextual button press to press square and X at the same time to lift it off the ground. And then to actually lift it off the ground, you have to mash X a bunch. You have to like button mash X to kind of lift it off the ground. And you do this for, 4 seconds. And eventually you're allowed to press triangle to pick up the staff and put it in your hands. Your like telekinetic hands. Like, all right, now we're going to walk over to the pedestal. We need to put it in the pedestal, but you need to hold L1 to enter like your aiming stance. Put your reticle at the pedestal, and once it's pointed at it just right, press X to place it in. And it's just kind of like, why is there so many button presses to do this kind of contextual little thing?
That was one of the first thing I told out. I was like, it's kind of weird that like you have to do like 6 to 7 inputs for a thing that like most other games would just do like 2 to 3 inputs on. I'm like, I don't really know about that. it was kind of nuts.
And also, this little mechanic. So at the end of the demo, I fought a boss. I didn't do great, but I didn't feel like I did great. But the demoer said I was actually doing better than a lot of the people who played it. So I don't know. But you're fighting this boss, and the boss, they have like a stagger meter. Every boss has stagger meters now. So I'm not doing a whole lot of damage, and I'm just kind of hitting their stagger meter, and their stagger meter is filling up. All the while, like this whole arena that you're in is kind of crumbling apart. Which, again, it's just almost looks like the developers are flexing. And there's there are pillars on the ground, but then, okay, I'm fighting the boss, I break their stagger meter, and then they get stunned for a bit, and I'm thinking, all right, here I go, time to do all my attacks. So I run up to them, and I start swinging at them, and I'm trying to do my combos, trying to do as much damage as I can, and realize I'm not doing a whole lot of damage here. Why not? And then the presenter, the Pearl Abyss spokesperson there, was like, well, actually, what you're supposed to do at this point, you're supposed to pick up those pillars in that same method I just mentioned with the flagstaff, and you're supposed to hit them with that. I think I even asked at this point, like, how was I supposed to know that? It wasn't very obvious that this was what I was supposed to do. Like, your normal attacks really don't do any damage at all. And this person even said it's kind of a gimmick fight where you're supposed to stun them, pick up a pillar, same method: L3, R3, square, X, 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 triangle, L1, swing, and to do damage. It kind of felt a little bit weird.
Yeah, in their credit, they mentioned that the demo that we were shown was condensed, so like you would see more of those pick up the pillar and or flag stuff and do stuff throughout the level normally to like kind of indicate like, hey, yeah, you kind of have this mechanic ingrained now. And supposedly the player won't know to do this like in the full game because
Yeah,
it'll
in
be
the
way too
demo, I didn't realize that was like the same thing. Like, oh, I thought that was
Yeah.
just the flag thing. I didn't realize I could
Right.
do that with any pillar. But anyways, stuff like that. There's also a couple of weird things where, like, when I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do, there's a little dot on the map that points me to like my objective. But I go to the dot and I see like, I don't know, a dozen NPCs, and they all look kind of the same. And I don't know who I'm supposed to talk to progress things. So here I am, like, walking up to NPCs, and the Pearl Abyss person was actually like, no, you want to talk to that one. And it's just a different one that looks exactly the same as any of the other ones. And you can't just also go up to the NPC and just press talk. You have to press like L1 to enter your like dialogue stance, and then point your reticle at the person, and then press talk. And I'm like, why? Like, why is it this much effort to just talk to an NPC?
Why is it like this?
And also, like, I wish it was a little bit more obvious, like, which person I should speak to. Like, I don't know, have the camera point to the person or something. It's like, or have them wearing something different. But anyways, those are just like minor annoyances, and I'm sure some of it is just coming into a demo not being familiar with it. But they were saying they were having a lot of feedback on like things like controls and confusion and things like that. So they were even actually writing down. They had their own little list. I saw they had like a form that the Pearl Abyss person was filling out about like feedback. So they are actively taking feedback from this demo from a lot of people. And some of the stuff may very well get tweaked before the game comes out later this year.
I mean, we even told the Pro the Biz rep like it would really benefit like a lot of people to like and you guys to like release a public demo because I think this is a game that like it's hard to understand just even talking about it and like even watch videos of it. Like I think it's something either you have to see for yourself in person being played or playing it yourself, and that's when things will click on like what kind of game it is and whether it's really for you or not, type of deal. Because it's such a weird sort of game where I have a little bit of understanding. There's like the Crimson Desert or not Crimson, Black Abyss, Black Desert online side of it because I have a friend who has spent a lot of time playing Black Desert Online. Like they put thousands of hours into it, so they are more familiar about the development of this game than most people because like this game was first like the in its infancy it was like an engine rework for Black Desert Online, and then it got like split off entirely into its own thing because they didn't want to make a new MMO that would cannibalize Black Desert Online or like push some sort of like engine update for Black Desert Online, like kind of might mess with the infrastructure of that game if they tried to do that. Um, and a lot of the things that they see in Crimson Desert is very much borrowed from the tech that they use in Black Desert Online. Like for example, all the skills that your dude does, like apparently like there's a warrior class in Black Desert Online that their skills are like 1-to-1 pretty much like those skills have already been in Black Desert Online, so like they know all the skills and they can name the skills that like the your character is doing in Crimson Desert, and stuff like that. And to them, like these see, it's like, oh, they're a lot of the things that Black Desert Online established, like the unconventional control system of the combat, like the different button combinations and the wrestling moves, like that's all from Black Desert Online. And to me, I'm just like they're trying to bring out the uniqueness of like the Black Desert Online mechanics that they've um already have, and like kind of repackage it like in a new game entirely that's separate from that and show it to like a wider audience that don't want to go like take the MMO dip into Black Desert Online to see that stuff. which I thought was really interesting in that regard. Like after watching you play it, Adam, like I was pretty sold. I'm like, I want to give this game a shot. Like I think I'd like enjoy this game because I think it's a lot. It's ticking a lot of boxes in my head of like what I like out of action games in terms of just kind of like the intense flow of combat and having to do like unconventional inputs to take out enemies. And I like that kind of like aggressive AI group horde sort of system, like trying to fight back against a game that's really trying to like fight back at you. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I mentioned this to the Pearl Abyss rep that we were talking to. But I was like, I'm really interested to see like what other what sorts of activities, non-combat activities this game has, and like of course they'll show more. And they said we'll have more to share as we get closer to the launch and everything. So I think it's like a broad like first impressions sort of thing. I'm like, oh, this game seems really neat. Like I am definitely interested in like seeing the full game.
So at the end of the demo, I opened up the menu, trying to be sneaky just to see like what's hiding in here, but they had blocked off a lot of it for stuff they weren't showing in the demo. But I did see that there were a lot of percentage meters. So people who love filling bars, there are bars to fill for like exploring the map and doing things or whatever. And also, I forget what it was, but there was some collectible something or another. It said I had like 13 out of 1,152 or something. Hell yeah. Got to get all of those things. I don't even know what they were. I don't even remember what there were, but there's, my point is the world map seemed huge, obviously, and there's a ton of things. I don't even know what they are. Things to collect, things to do, points to get. So it's definitely gonna, appears to be like that open world, probably checklisty if you really want it to be. But I did ask the Pearl Abyss rep how long the game was going to be, and they couldn't answer. Right? I'm trying to remember. I don't think they gave a hard answer.
I don't think they didn't give it. They didn't give a hard answer. What we do know of is one. There was a horse that you got to ask. There are different horses different types of horses that you can get. They said yes, but they didn't specify how. I was wondering about this because one of my other friends who gave Black Desert Online a try several years ago got really, really into horse breeding in that game. And I don't know if they have a similar horse breeding system in this game or not. I don't know, but apparently the horse breeding system in Black Desert Online is pretty complex and addictive. So I wonder if Crimson Desert will have that. Two, you already mentioned this a little bit, Adam, but like the stats that we can see from the main menu is like attack, defense, like several other ones that are like I forgot the other ones, but there's like one for movement speed and attack speed specifically as well. And there's also like meals that you can consume for buffs.
Yeah.
And then one of the ways you can get new equipment is by beating bosses. We did ask the rep if there's going to be a transmog system on whether you can keep the appearance of one equipment and have the stats of another. They couldn't say answer that for sure yet, but they're going to consider that and take that into account. So hopefully, it'll be there at launch or shortly after launch, whatever they decide, because we all love transmog systems if they're there. But yeah, and as you were wrapping up that demo, they have when you opened up the map screen, a lot of it was obviously covered up, but it seemed gigantic. I was like, seems really big. You were like one tiny speck. Like by the time you zoomed all the way out, I was like, oh my god. You only discovered it, like saw like that zone that you just like went through was like I already felt kind of big, but then when you zoomed out the map all the way, like even though you can see 99% of it, you're just like, oh, all right, game seems big.
At one point in the demo, I finished my objective, but I needed to escape the war zone, so I called my horse. But then my horse got scared and ran away, so I stole someone else's horse and rode that back instead.
Oh yeah.
Well, thank you, James, for talking about your experience getting hands-on with Pragmata, and Adam for hands-on with, I was like Crimson or Black Desert, Crimson Desert. So that leaves Josh. Like, your number one or most memorable experience playing a game, putting hands-on, talking to a dev.
Unfortunately, I can't even talk about that yet.
Oh.
Next podcast, I'll be able to. So, but one of the ones I was able to check out, in terms of like what we mentioned it already here, is on Onimusha. We didn't get hands-on with it. It's a hands-off gameplay presentation, but we saw the game being played live in front of us from a representative at Capcom, and that seemed really cool because it's definitely I've seen several other people and outlets say, oh, it's a Souls-like. I'm like, this is, I wouldn't really call it a Souls-like, but I understand why people call it that if they're not familiar with the Onimusha games and series. But to me, it's like it's a very true to like true to its roots. Next entry in the Onimusha series that has like the colored orb system that your protagonist, like in the other protagonists throughout the series, has like this Oni gauntlet that can suck up these orbs that the Genma demons that you slay um after you slay them, like different colored orbs will spew out of them, and they all do different things. Like gold orbs will heal you. Red orbs are currency for other upgrade systems in those games, and presumably this game, though they didn't show us the upgrade systems, they were being very coy about that because throughout like the linear level that they were traveling through, there was like this lit up shrine at the back that they didn't go up and interact with, but it looked interactable. But they definitely deliberately shied away from like going to it to, you know, to show you if it was interactable or not. So they're going to show more about that game before it comes out next year. And then there's blue orbs that in other games build up this magic gauge, but in this game you have like skill abilities that are not tied to time. They're not tied to cooldowns. They are tied to like the skill meter gauge beneath them. So you use blue orbs to charge that up instead of like a magic gauge in past. It was pretty brutal and violent compared to what I remember of Onimusha, but not in a bad way. But it's just like it's very, yeah, as tech has developed since like the last Onimusha game, like in mid to late aughts with Dawn of Dreams. Um, like as I even described in my preview of it, like you can see like the flesh of the Genma demons like tearing apart as Musashi, the new protagonist, in this game, like is slicing his sword through them. Like there's one point where he's slicing one of them like vertically in half, and you see all of that. It's like, oh, this is this is brutal, but it's like but gratifying if you're like into sort of like that kind of fulfilling that samurai action um game in high fidelity. It is definitely has the ebb and flow and the cadence of like an Onimusha game. I'm very I'm very stoked that like Capcom is embracing what makes an Onimusha game, what makes them so compelling in the first place, and not really bending the knee to like, oh, this should be more like a Souls like, or this should be more like how any other like modern game trend. We want this to be an Onimusha game, and from what I saw, I was like, yep, that sure is a damn Onimusha. That's awesome.
That's good
So
to hear. I always worry about Capcom's always chasing trends. Like back in Resident Evil 5 days, it's like,
yeah,
what the
yeah,
hell is this like Call of Duty shit? I want Resident Evil, not
right,
this stupid shit right here, right?
right, yeah. So it was cool to see, yeah. So that's the thing I could talk about for right now in terms of like I wrote a preview up. I also wrote up a preview of Code Vein 2. They gave us a special behind the scenes presentation to that after it was announced. I forgot where it was exactly. Was it the Summer Games Fest or another stream? I already forgot.
It was Summer Game Fest.
Okay. Um, and they told us about like some of their aims and goals for that game. But the thing that I that I took away from it was back when the first Code Vein came out, like 6 years ago. It was definitely a common description you'd hear about it is it's an anime Souls like. It's Souls like, but anime, and one of the grievances that people had that's commonly shared by people who played it was this game sort of has an identity crisis where it's the ebb and flow of combat in it is like sort of like the Dark Souls games where it's like kind of slow and meticulous, but it kind of betrays the visuals where it's like it wants to be frenetic and chaotic, and sometimes it does, but it never strikes a great balance between like the slow meticulousness of a Souls like and like embracing its more action side to it. So I think they're starting to really cultivate that identity with Code Vein 2 and leaning more into that action flow of it rather than the slow meticulousness that they were chasing towards because of that whole Souls like genre. Mikhail, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that point about how like it had an identity crisis in some way because when like when the first Berserker Khazan came out, the art style it's going for and the gameplay style is going for, like, obviously that's more Neo inspired than like traditional Dark Souls or whatever. I had a lot of friends who brought up how Khazan kind of it was at odds with itself as well, with its like visual design, where you didn't expect that kind of aesthetic to have that kind of gameplay. But with Code Vein, it, at least in my case, I enjoyed the game quite a bit, except for how floaty it felt. So, do you think that's addressed? If the art style, if like the at least the identity thing is being addressed, do you think the game feel is better than the original?
I think it's still early development, so like, well, it's still in development. I don't know how early or late it is, but like we saw tiny bits of gameplay that were still pretty unoptimized, but it's still a work in progress, of course. But it seems like it definitely feels more fast paced than the original. I can't say how floaty it is because I didn't get to play it for
Okay.
myself, of course. But they do have like new things like these jails attacks, which are like special like abilities that you saw in the announcement trailer, like the bat wings is like a sort of jail attack. That like when you hit them, you get this resource called Ecor, which is the first code vein back, which lets you do like your blood code skills and gifts and so forth. So that's like another resource in that battle economy that you can play around with. They have a drain attacks are back from the original, um, and and this thing's called Forma, and there's like three different kinds of Forma, like attack, defense, and bequeath Forma. And like your defense Forma is like your guardian parrying tools, but like bequeath Forma gives you like other temporary forms of weapons that aren't part of the base weapons. For example, one of the bequeath Forma is like a combat bow that you can use temporarily. So they're gonna give you a lot more tools in combat. It seems like to kind of shake it up, and not just stick to like your base like weapon only. Um, and you also have like a motorcycle for like more open zones that was I think shown in the announcement very briefly uh, as well. Sorry for if you're hearing alerts. There's like Amber alerts coming off of my phone. Um,
No worries.
yeah. So the when they started off that presentation, I think it's really interesting that they've really acknowledged a lot of the things that worked in the first Code Vein based on player feedback. Like when you talk about Code Vein to people who've played it, and they talk about like, hey, what were the things that you enjoyed about it? Usually, the two things that people will bring up is one, the character creator is excellent in Code Vein, like kind of putting your ideal like male or female like anime character and having all these like options to tweak it them to your liking, and also the AI partner co-op system because people eventually began to care for the characters, not necessarily through the plot itself primarily, but through like, hey, like I got to explore around these stages with them because they were helpful for my build, or they enriched my play style because of the way that they played. Like this person was a great tank, this person was a great supporter, and they were able to work with them to a certain degree throughout levels. Um, and they're expanding on both of those systems by giving you way more customization to options, like in around 20 voice lines or voice types or lines or whatever, voice options for your character, and expanding the AI support system in this game. I don't know if they're still gonna have the multiplayer co-op with another person from the first Code Vein. I'm not 100% sure if that's still there in this one. I believe that was possible in the first one correctly. Um, and yeah, so it was a lot of early stuff based on like the um, announcement of the game, but it's shaping up to be really cool, like a cool sequel. Though the way they phrase it, it's like it's a complete reimagining. So I don't know if they're gonna directly like follow up on the events of like the last game to like any direct degree, or if it's something that's like it'll be acknowledged. And like stuff about that aspect of it is still murky. But if you want to learn more about like what I heard, go read my preview on Code Vein 2. And yeah, and then we're gonna see like they're gonna have more stuff to show as as its release date nears sometime next year.
So all the games that we've talked about so far do have pretty lengthy write-ups on the site. If you go to rpgsite.net and then you hit the tab that says articles, that'll skip through all the news, just the trailer uploads and things like that, and go to all the different previews that we've got up on the site in the last week. That includes Code Vein 2, Crimson Desert, the Pragmata, Onimusha. There's a few other here that we've not really gone over. Instead of just going through them line by line, I don't know if there's any of these other ones here that we've got listed on our outline that you guys want to go into. Things like Petal Runner, Moonlighter, Dosa Divas, anything like that.
There is an interesting story. Like James, Adam, and I this was Adam's appointment for Petal Runner, and the game itself is really cool, really gorgeous. Like as Adam said, really evoking that Game Boy era style visuals. But I think the most interesting part was speaking to the developers on it and how the two developers on it met. Apparently, they met through Instagram, and one of the developers, I believe the artist on it, lead artist on it, um, like ran a YouTube channel, and the other developer was like a big fan of their YouTube channel and would occasionally leave comments on their YouTube videos, and that's how they kind of began to know each other and how they started mingling with one another about like, hey, let's make a game together. It seems like we can really work together and make something special. And I thought that was like just like the most like awesome, wholesome story of like how this game came to be when and how their developers met up and like collaborated one another. That was like super cool.
It is stories like that. This might be a little cheesy. It is stories like that that make me think of like the butterfly effect. Like one tiny moment in time where someone decided to leave a comment on a YouTube video leads to years later this project
Yeah,
existing, and how
yeah.
many different layers there are of that throughout our
Mm.
throughout everything.
Did you want to add on to anything, Adam or James, about the pedal runner?
Yeah, I really liked how Petal Runner looked. It's obviously got that Game Boy aesthetic, and I love the buzzy sound effects.
Mm.
The animation is really nice and kind of it does betray its kind of Game Boy aesthetic a little bit because those animations wouldn't have been possible. But still, I really like how it looks. It's kind of like it's like Pokemon without the battles, and it uses these like WarioWare-ish mini games instead as you are like delivering pets to the world. Some of the writing that I encountered was like maybe a little bit corny, but kind of charming, but also kind of corny. I'm curious about this game. I like the color palette. I like the look. I like the style. Coming out next year, I think.
Outside of these other previews, we did actually get 2 reviews up on the site in the last week as well, and these are both from James. So James, I'll let you decide which one you want to speak to first.
I will have to say before he does, James did call
Oh,
it. I'll give him his props. He said, "I bet you that Lies of P DLC is gonna get shadow dropped at SGF," and lo and behold, he was totally right on the money on that one. I'll give James props for that.
Yeah, yeah. I hate that I was right about that with Lies of P. So I'll start with that. Um, the Lies of P DLC is really, really good. Um, I I said it in my review that it's kind of like a sort of like given. It feels like a lot with a lot of people where like Souls DLCs or like Souls likes even will be the best parts of the game, and that definitely feels like it's the case with Overture. Great bosses, great weapons, really really good story stuff. Like surprisingly so, you can tell that they took a lot of the budget that they got from the base game doing well, and I could already tell that the company was like putting it back into the game just from the fact they had a huge like preview event for the DLC. But it's like, man, presentation here is better than the base game. That's insane.
Yeah, the a common sentiment I heard you and then one of our community members playing Pat, who also really highly praises it, is that the development studio really found their footing and found like their confidence and in terms of storytelling in that DLC. Like they learned, it seems like they learned a lot from making that base game, and then identifying what people liked about the gameplay and the narrative of the base game, and putting that on overdrive in the DLC in a really spectacular fashion that people seem to really, really enjoy.
Also, I'm gonna
Yeah.
give you shouts out for trying to popularize Lies of PLC.
It's really good.
I also heard you get an awesome weapon type, or a type of weapon after you beat that DLC, that you can take back into the base game. That people, it seems to highly incentivize replaying if you really want to play around with that thing. I won't spell what it is, but people seem to really enjoy that as well.
Yep.
I'm next time Liza P goes onto discount, like a deep discount, I should pick that up along with this Overture DLC. Already kind of stacked on games at the moment, but it seems like they're gearing up for a mainline sequel, and if this is their learning lessons with the DLC alone, it seems like the whatever the follow up game is to Liza P
It should
is
be
gonna
incredible,
be,
yeah.
yeah, it might just be just freaking, yeah, one of the best things ever potentially.
Yeah, like I do want to shout out that I like that the levels are still fairly linear, but the way that they're designed this time, they're a lot more interesting. It's not just like a straight line for most of the game.
Mhm.
I definitely like one of the things I shout out is like an early level, you're like going through like a research facility, and you can see like you're walking over these grates and you can tell, oh, there's a path underneath these. I wonder when I'm going to get to them. And it's like the way that the level winds in on itself is really fascinating, especially with the shortcuts and how like halfway through you unlock this you turn off this, for lack of a better term, like generator that's like spewing this like icy cold air that you can't get through. And it's just really neat. Like I was very impressed with how the level design felt compared to the base game, especially since like this was all fresh to me. I just played through Liza P last month. So when
Yeah,
I'm t- when, when I'm
go
telling
go
you
for
that
it.
it's like the DLC is the best part of the game, it's not just recency bias. It's like I literally just played through the base game, and that's how I'm feeling. So
Yeah, but, I know we sort of got into this a little bit when you first, like, after your preview event, but now that you've had hands on with it, like, exactly how early can people access this DLC, and can people still access it after beating the base game?
um you need to get to Act 9 essentially as soon as you discover what's behind the painting, then you can access the DLC.
And then do you have to go to, like, a physical location
Yes,
to
as
access it?
everyone expected, there's like a broken down stargazer that's in like Act 3, Act 4 that was kind of conspicuous because it's the only one in the game. You interact with that and it will take you to the DLC.
Got it.
And the DLC itself is about a little bit more than half the size of the base game, I'd say, around there.
Okay, but still, it seems pretty chunky then. It's still like
Yeah.
a good several hours.
Yeah, it took me like 10, 11 hours to get through it.
Oh,
I
wow.
played through the base game pretty quickly. It took me like 20 hours, whereas I've seen people say it took them like 30. So it's a good amount of game, which is good.
Cool. Cool.
And then the other
And then
review
you
I
also,
did.
yeah, I was gonna go lead you into that. Go ahead.
So if you read my original Pokemon Scarlet and Violet review, you'd remember, or maybe you wouldn't, that like my main takeaway was, man, this game could be really good if they fix up the technical aspects of it. I hope that eventually happens someday. Well, they never did that for Switch 1, but the Switch 2 version of Scarlet and Violet is genuinely an insane glow up compared to the original release. We're talking, we're going from like in handheld mode 720p, around 20 FPS, maybe a little bit higher, usually a little bit lower, to it's 1080p, 60 FPS. In docked mode, it's like obviously dynamic resolution, but like it's close to 4K and it's 60 FPS. And it's like, man, the loading times are super improved. The connectivity for like Terror Raid battles are much better.
Yeah,
This is how the game.
James jump scared me with this game at SGF. We were waiting for the Xbox showcase to start on Sunday, and we were outside at the some SGF like area, and I was like, just checking up, like, hey, when's it starting and everything. And then all of a sudden, James like puts a Switch 2 to my face as he's like gliding around like the Pokemon Violet, and I'm like, oh my god, like it
Why is
was
it
like
so
one of those.
smooth?
Yeah, well, what is this game? I was genuinely impressed seeing this in person, like seeing it run at 60 frames on handheld. I didn't see any div, and it was just flying around. I'm like, I don't recognize this game. Don't ever do that again. So that was a welcome surprise.
Go ahead, Mikhail.
So yeah, so Pokemon's super funny because before anyone had actually played it in person, not in person, before the update went live, I think the Pokemon company had an event where they had some people come over to their offices and show it off. I still didn't believe it, even though there was a lot of footage. I just said, "There's no way this is how it runs on it." So when I got my Switch 2, I still don't have my SD card express because those things are just impossible to find. So it should be here soon. But the one game I downloaded, the Switch One game was Pokemon. I booted it up. I just laughed out loud, actually, like IRL, when I played it for 2 minutes, and I said, I need to like soak into this later. I'm just gonna delete it. It's like, we have this emote which I post in the work chat, that blob exorcism. This is like one of those moments. I was like, this cannot be real. I'll deal with it later, and I deleted it. I'll get
Yeah,
back to it next week.
you're just like, I'm just hallucinating. I'm just gonna delete this and pretend it
Yeah.
didn't happen, and then come back to it later because I'm clearly tripping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you. But yeah, but you made the case, James. That this should definitely get a re-review on the Switch 2 because it's such a big step up in terms of like this gameplay experience. And, like it feels like a new game to play
Yep.
because it runs so much better. It looks cleaner and smoother, and it like it's one of those games that like the performance actively worked against it, and now it like just feels like a dream to play now on a Switch too.
Yep.
And this is a free update, not even
Right.
like a Switch 2 edition paid $10 thing or like a $2.50 thing like Fantasy Life. This is just a free update for everyone. It's pretty
Right.
crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well justified on that end.
Well, that kind of I think covers us for like Summer Games Fest kind of reception and the previews and the hands-on that you've gotten. Of course, we still have a lot more news to talk about that came from there that we'll talk about as well. Trailers that were shown during the Xbox showcase, and things like that. Just last chance to stop me before I proceed on to like a few more articles and then going into the announcements.
I think you're I think we're ready to move on, but like just there are still some things to SGF that we have yet to we'll dive into next week that we can't talk about yet.
Right. And actually, you did earmark a small section here to talk about. We've mentioned it in passing. Steam Next Fest, which is similar title, different events, similar timing. Um, Steam partnering with a bunch of indie, usually self-published or smaller published games, presenting all of their projects in a demo format for a limited time in the month of June. So you have spent some time going into a few of these. You try to make an effort every year to at least platform a couple of these games that otherwise could be drowned out in the deluge of trailers and events and things like that.
Yeah, it's chaotic and hectic this time around because they decided to start it right after the week of right and after and still during the week of SGF because it started like this past week and SGF is still running till Monday and everything. So and they're still like even at the some of the indie publishers and developers there like showcased their game through their Steam Next Fest demo build um at the SGF HQ area where all of that was held. But I was able to get some time amidst like relaxing from SGF along with doing some write ups for it. Some of the games I was able to check out and it was one of the big ones that people were talking about was Mina the Hollower, which is the new game from the Shovel Knight developers. That's a really lovely Steam Next Fest demo. Definitely one of the more high profile ones, especially because it's been in development for quite a long time. But it's coming together real well. So that's a cool like top down action RPG where you're playing this Mina the rat, sort of like this detective type character.
She's a
Kind of
mouse.
Sorry, mouse. um, And she has the mechanic of like burrowing underground during her movements. So some of like the environmental puzzles involves burrowing, and it's also a good way to deflect some attacks. You have like 3 weapon types for the beginning. I chose the hammer because you can charge it up and do like a big slam and does a lot of damage. Just really, really interesting, lovely demo. Check out. Um,
It's like less than an hour long too.
yeah, yeah, it's good. It's good. Were you able to play it?
Yeah, I played it.
Oh, what do you think?
It's cool. I mean, it definitely has that Game Boy Zelda inspiration. It's a bit
Mhm.
faster. Like you do the jump as Mina, and it looks exactly like the Rock's Feather from like Link's Awakening or the Oracle games. It's a bit faster than those Zelda games are, especially like the boss fights. You kind of have to keep moving. There is a very very light Souls mechanic, or it's a I should say Bones mechanic, where you pick up bones and you use these to like level up. It is an RPG, at least to some extent. But then if you die, you can lose all your bones. You gotta get back to them and pick them up again.
Yep. So I think does this have saved data transfer, if I remember
Apparently,
correctly?
but it's only like an
Yeah.
hour, like not even.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not getting a huge head start if you play it. But
Yeah.
it's a good demo.
It's good. Good. Another one that isn't necessarily RPG, but still I was interested to check out was the Ninja Gaiden Ragebound demo. One of the more once again another higher profile game, the new upcoming 2D Ninja Gaiden game made from the developers of Blasphemous. Has a good mix of the combat and platformer um, sort of systems that Ninja Gaiden was originally known for in its 2D side scrollers. This one has a bit more like mechanics from the original games going on, especially as you're platforming through projectiles and there's color coded sort of mechanics through it for some puzzles because there's like this I don't know this spirit lady I guess with you that at sometimes your main character will get stuck like in a fleshy looking contraption and so the spirit lady has to go off on her own and like free him from it at certain parts of the level. It just has like a good cadence of like there will always be enemies constantly like spawning in against you at times. So you're incentivized not to kill always all the enemies on screen, but find like a path through them, and you use that through your various navigational tools, including like hey being able to bounce off of projectiles that are shooting at you, and you have to kind of use that to your advantage of like finding a path forward rather than trying to kill everything in front of you. There's also like mechanics such as like using your life force to do a powered up slash, and some enemies will give you like that aura to do like your next big attack will do a lot of damage. So some enemies can only be killed by like that insta kill um big slash damage thing. So it's a good mix of like combat action and like puzzle platforming in a chaotic way. Very very cool, very cool. Um, one that really caught me off guard was a little turn-based RPG called Artis Impact. It's a pixel-based RPG. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the development studio behind it and like the size of the studio behind Artist Impact. All it says on the Steam page is developed by and published by Moss. I don't know if Moss is like a solo developer or a small studio of people necessarily. But what I do know is like there's a pretty lovely pixel art game that has like a very meticulous way it's presenting its pixel animations. Whenever like you go through a door or you're interacting with something, it like kind of zooms in like a almost like a picture in picture of the frame. So you like kind of get a zoom in of like the pixel animation at play of what you're doing, like opening the door, for example, and your protagonist goes through it. Um, you really see like the effort put into the pixel art animations in terms of in combat. Yeah, it's like your party members are like your main sword lady and the little bot supporting her. Kind of like the obviously inspired by Nier Automata, no doubt. Um, and like the bot like uh heals you every turn as like you're building up resources and spending them for skills, and the way that like the skills are animated in combat is very very impressive, like very fluid pixel art animation that um you know it's very stylish, like sword stylish, almost Devil May Cry esque uh animation work in terms of like the choreography and the way that are firing off with like a quick sword stance and slashes and all that very very neat. demo that also has like a sandboxy aspect to it, where you have like a main objective of like, hey, fend off like these hostile robots coming to this inn. But in the meantime, as you're waiting for those to like kind of come in, it's kind of on your own discretion of like how you want to spend the day. So there are like a lot of like hidden aspects to the demo that aren't necessarily highlighted towards you. Like there's like hidden side quests, hidden interactions, hidden side events that like I don't know exactly what their conditions are to like spawn them, but there are definitely like interactions and moments in that demo that kind of just organically for like happen because I interacted with something and it played an event and that there was no prompt for that. It's just because I explored and interacted with stuff throughout the environment in the hotels. I wonder what the full game's flow is like, but that was like really neat. It's unusual and I liked it. So that's what I liked. And one that was shown off at SGF that also had a Steam Next Fest demo was like a beat 'em up, sort of light action RPG esque game called Absalom. This is a really cool demo. This is made from I believe the devs behind Shredder's Revenge. Um, and
Oh, that's neat.
this yeah, it highly recommended. Like people check it out if you're like a fan of like 2.5D beat 'em up brawlers. Has a really satisfying like combo system that like all the stuff that you're doing like flow into each other like when you do like a light combo like enemies fly back and bounce off the wall so you can continue that combo like almost like a fighting game. um it supports online multiplayer as well using rollback netcode, which is funny. I really dig that. And the demo offers two playable characters. Like this, one's like an elf sword lady, and the other is like a dwarf with a gun, and that uses his fist to fight. I really like the dwarf playing that dwarf. He's a cool little guy. Very very satisfying. Just um, demo to play. I'm still kind of iffy on like the roguelike structure of it because it is like a run based game, and when you die you kind of revive back at like as like a home base, and you use the resources that you accumulate throughout that run to power you up and do that run again. But there is like seems to be like branching paths at least in the run, so like you do have like an option for some of the rooms to like go to another path and go explore that sort of stuff. So, but I'm really looking forward to that game. It after playing that demo, that was really cool. So that was
That
some
was
of the games I was able to
Absalom.
play. Absolum, Absolum. Absolum.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's still some stuff I want to check out, but those are the ones that like that stuck out to me. Just this early on, and the new Steam Next Fest like ends like in 2 days, so I have to get around to play more of it. Some of these games that I downloaded. It's I try my best like every Steam Next Fest to kind of like just kind of get a try out some of this stuff, see what's on my radar
No,
after playing them.
I always wish that it lasted a little bit longer, like
Me too.
throughout June and July at least, or something.
Right. So yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of games coming out, and there's a lot of more games coming out in the future beyond that. That's what I get out
That's
of
like a motto. Yep.
it.
A few other features up on the site, not explicitly related to the summer events.
Oh wait,
We did
sorry,
bring
sorry.
hmm?
Mikhail raised his hand on Ninja Gaiden, and we just completely I just noticed right now. Sorry, Mikhail. What did you want to say about Ninja Gaiden?
Oh yeah, no worries. So basically, I've seen this sentiment around a lot that Ninja Gaiden Ragebound feels a lot like a Shinobi game, and the new Shinobi Art of Vengeance feels like a Ninja Gaiden game. Do you
That's
agree
really
with that?
funny. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to try out Shinobi. Yeah, but I could
Okay.
definitely see how the new Ninja Gaiden game resembles like the flow of Shinobi. I can see that. So sorry, Brian. Just didn't want to
No, no
forget
worries.
about
I
me
missed that
killer.
too.
Yeah.
Adam, give me some context here. We got I believe, a new contributor to the site, a new freelancer that was able to put up an interview with Yuji Horii, Blake Simons. This is his first time contributing to RPG site. I don't recognize the name.
Yeah, so Blake Simons, I didn't know him before this piece, but they are Italian, as far as I understand, and they do a bunch of media type interviews and opportunities in Europe, at least, like not just gaming, but also TV and animation and things like that. And Yuji Horii, the creator of Dragon Quest, was in Naples. I believe this was the same event. It was literally called, I think, Naples Comic Con. I think this was the same event where that Chrono Trigger misinterpretation came out, where it was like he announced Chrono Trigger remake, but that was just the interpreter somehow making it up.
Being
Still don't know how
silly,
that worked.
yeah.
But anyways, also during that event, there was a roundtable discussion with Yuji Horii, and he was present at that, and they kind of had like a roundtable interview. And I probably don't want to go into all the politics of this, but anyways, he did an interview and it ended up on RPG Site. And the interview isn't like incredibly insightful, I would say. I'm just admitting, if you're looking for like a super nugget of like some hidden detail or some revelation about Dragon Quest 12, it's not there. But just some feedback about Hori's thoughts on the new remakes. He started out wanting to make manga. That's what he wanted to do. And he even made some of his own. And there's actually an image in the article about a manga panel that he created a long time ago. Yuji Horii does sort of mention things that like he's interested in stuff like AI. Now, some people I saw like took this as like, no, they got Horii or whatever. Hori's like 72 years old or something, and he probably just thinks of AI as like another possible technology. I don't think it means it's like you're gonna have like generative created dragon characters in Dragon Quest 12 or anything like that, right? Don't jump the gun. He just thinks of it as like he's trying to stay modern. So, but he does mention that he's like interested in these technologies.
So yeah, Blake did put up because he had the opportunity to run into Yuji Horii over in Naples during his trip to Italy. Just a fun conversation and an interview back and forth with Yuji Horii. Talk about his time in Italy, talking about his inspirations, like what he likes to do. Apparently, he shared his love of manga that he reads on his phone. Obviously, focusing a lot on Dragon Quest, both the recent remake and the 1 and 2.
There was a funny part of the interview that I thought was amusing. There's a part in the interview where they're talking about like, RPG design very briefly, and the interviewer asks basically like, a game that's popular right now is Clair Obscure Expedition 33. Have you heard of it? And Yuji Hori's like, no, I haven't heard of that game. Which is like, you do you, Yuji, just like in your own world.
Very honest. We have that interview up on the site. And the last couple of features that we have is I bundled these all together. Mikhail has been working away tirelessly to consistently cover PC portable performance and Switch performance of recent and upcoming games. So I have up here, we talked about last week, Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma. We talked over the last month, Fantasy Life I, now is available on Switch 2. And we didn't really mention this, but of course, released in the last week, Stellar Blade, released on PC, has done very well in terms of like sales numbers. And you looked at it on Steam Deck. So I don't know, between Rune Factory, Fantasy Life, and Stellar Blade, if you've got any key takeaways, having played through all of these on Steam Deck, Switch, ROG Ally, other devices.
Yeah, so bit of an interesting situation with Rune Factory and Fantasy Life I, because they were Switch 2 launch titles in the end, but we didn't have access to Switch 2. Like no one had access to Switch 2 units beforehand. So I had to, and because I had access to the games on other platforms, I had to we have embargoes for that. So I did for Rune Factory, I did it on Switch 1 and the Steam version. And I went back and updated that with some new takeaways for just the Switch 2 version, some comparisons and stuff. And I did the same thing for Fantasy Life I. Now, the funny thing about Fantasy Life I was I decided to get through both of these before the weekend so I could focus on some other articles I'm doing. And I
they
did
updated
Fantasy
it.
Life I. Yeah, I finished Fantasy Life I finished testing it. I literally set up my photo. I did that, edited everything, hit publish. And I think it was literally like 5 or 10 minutes later, they said announcing patch 1.31, which is going live today. And I'm like, are you serious?
And it was
So,
a pretty significant one too, because like
yes.
already, like spoiler alert if you haven't read his article, the Switch 2 version is good. It's like genuinely a really good way to play the game. But they increased the shadow resolution, they increased the level of detail, like how far it goes out. They added like screen space reflections to water. It's like it already looked pretty good on Switch 2, but now it's like, yeah, looks better.
And the important thing for me was the depth of field slider because I hate the stupid blur which a lot of these games have on around the edges of the screen, and you could only do that on PC before this update. So that update arrived fixing my major complaint with it. Now there's just some performance issues
And
which aren't
really, the
major, but
performance
they're there. Yeah.
Yeah, the performance issues are only really a thing in Gynermosia. Like outside of it, it runs at pretty much a lock 60, but like in Gynermosia, you do see dips like down to like maybe like mid 40s. It still runs fine. It's just you can notice that the frames are dipping a little bit.
Yeah, so that was Fantasy Life I, and Rune Factory was a little more interesting in how they approached it because I feel like obviously I wasn't on the dev team, not a game dev or anything, but I feel like more effort went into optimizing the game for Switch 1 than it did for Switch 2 because every trailer which they showed for the game, I just thought this is gonna run like dog shit on Switch because like you know how Rune Factory 5 was, I thought this is just a Switch 2 game being backported or something given how it looked. But they did a good job with it on Switch 1, and I feel like the Switch 2 handheld experience is pretty mediocre compared to like how much work clearly went into the Switch 1 version from the outside. Docked is good, like it's a very nice experience. I think the mouse controls are a bit tacked on because you know, like these kinds of games where you have bow aiming and all, a lot of games on Switch they had gyro support. This does not have that on Switch at all, and it does not even have mouse controls. The mouse controls are just for when you're doing the farming and the layout and stuff. So hopefully this is a game which they like continuously update over time and address some of the performance issues. But yeah, this is like I was hoping this game just genuinely, because so many people I know are buying this with the console, like Cyberpunk, Rune Factory, and the Mario Kart bundle. That's like the most common package which people are getting that I know.
And it seems
So
like
that was Rune Factory.
if people are getting digital games or spending money for Welcome Tour, and I know a lot of people are picking up Fantasy Life I, especially since word's out that the Switch 2 version is a really good way to play it. So
Yeah. And Stellar Blade was a little funny pre-release. Like I had a save issue, but yeah, I mentioned that in the article. That PC port it seemed fantastic after like 15 minutes of playing it, and I said there's no way it'll actually hold up well. But it did. Like it's probably, I don't know if you'd count it as a AAA game or not, but I think like out of all the quote unquote big games which have been Steam Deck verified in the last few weeks, this is the only one which actually deserves it. And I've
Fantasy
not
Life
heard
did.
anyone. I mean, I don't count that as a big game like this, but Fantasy Life I is like, I mean, I gave it a 10, so like, I love that game. But yeah, Stellar Blade seems like a really good port, even for people who play on Windows. I didn't have any Unreal Engine stutter on the ROG Ally. No one I know who's playing it is saying it's a bad port. It just seems like a very well optimized release, and yeah, it's like massive Steam CCUs. It's probably going to hit a bigger peak by tomorrow when the podcast goes live. So yeah, very happy with that. I
Yeah,
also I
played
need
both
to get the
versions too.
Nikkei DLC. Yeah, so I need to play the Nikkei DLC. I got it on PS5. My PC review code was the complete edition, but yeah, I got the DLC on PS5, so I will eventually get back to that after finishing a bazillion Switch 2 things. So yeah, go
But
ahead,
yeah,
Chow.
I was gonna say I've played both of these games so far. It'll be like the Guardian of Azuma. I've played through a bit of it, and I could see where Junior's coming from, but I think he was a little bit overly harsh in the game from my experience from going through it. You know, as a Rune Factory expert. So at least that's my take for it. Like
Rune
as for
Factory
like
Savant.
as for like the performance of that game, it's like it seems pretty okay to me. I don't know like what it would be like comparing to Switch 1. I think the game only chugs when you go to like a new map. I think my only issues with the game so far is extremely easy. I could like probably just kill like the first boss just being attacked like a million, being getting hit on purpose, trying to let it kill me. It just wouldn't do it. They just do so low damage. It's just like I think the game is a bit too easy on the front end, right? Or at least that's for my take of it, because I didn't get much to play during the last podcast. So it's like, oh, I just got the Switch 2, and it's like, oh, podcast is starting tomorrow. It's like, oh, rip, right? But you know, at least
I
that's my take.
also
You find it?
got Stellar Blade gifted to me, so I have to go through that. I played a little bit of it, and yeah, obviously my PC's are pretty all right, so it's been running really fantastically for
Yeah, I
me.
mean, it run fantastic on the PS5, and I expect it to run just as well on PC. And
My last eyes and hands on it still a bit was the PS5 demo, and that was kind of iffy. Like,
I mean, it was
yeah,
input lag, but the game, like the graphic infidelity, is insane. I mean, it looks
yeah. I mean, it looks really nice, and it having like virtually like very little to no input lag on PC helps it a lot. Like as I play through it now, I'm like, wow, a lot of my impressions of this game was marred because of input lag after the fact.
That's the whole
Was
reason I
that
didn't even pick it up at launch. Is like I played the demo. It's like, man, this input lag's fucking terrible, bro.
was that not there in the full release? Because I didn't play the demo. I just played the full game on PS5 and I
I
played the full game on PC and both on the same 120 hertz monitor as well. So I wasn't
I think I
really.
remember. I think I remember hearing people say that some of the input lag was actually like a game system thing that they reverted part of it for the full release. I don't know how
Oh,
true that
okay.
is, but
Okay, I didn't try the demo for PC or PS5. I just got the full game directly, so I have no frame of reference for that. But
there. I was gonna say there was a patch to mitigate the problem, like when the game first launched, because people kept complaining about it. Then some people didn't
okay,
want to upgrade to the new patch because two of the outfits, got kind of censored or changed, whatever you want to call it. And then they didn't want to update. I'm like, it's like I'll take fixing input lag over this shit, right? So at
yeah.
least that's
Again, that's literally the whole reason I didn't pick it up. And then they said, yeah, it's coming to PC eventually. And it's like, I don't know when I'll get to it, but sure.
it's probably gonna be like insane on your PC anyway. Like you could probably do like 500 FPS or some nonsense.
yeah, but they have like
I
this insane ultra wide setting. Maybe you get one of those super ultra wide monitors.
Yeah. I actually had that on Steam Deck just to see how stupid it looks, like enable 32:9 mode by fooling the game into thinking it's not running on a Steam Deck. And I'll post a photo of that later. It looks so dumb, but yeah, it's playable.
And I think with all of that, I think we're ready to go into news. So we're gonna keep on the Summer Games Fest kind of train here. But before I do, I'll just say, like, yeah, go to rpgsite.net, hit the features button, sorry, articles button, and you'll be able to see all those previews, reviews, Switch 2, or Steam Deck. All of that will be underneath that articles button. If you're interested in reading about Code Vein, Rune Factory, Moonlighter 2, all of those, Pragmata. So
also
in
will be
no
having a few
particular
more
order.
previews that'll probably be up by the time
Yeah.
this podcast is live.
Yeah, like Josh
Uh,
has kind of insinuated, there's other things that are still in the works that aren't published at the time of recording. So I didn't put these in any particular order. Like I didn't put this in like, here's what was announced in PC Game Show, here's what was announced at Xbox, here's what was announced after the fact. I kind of just tried to put this in terms of like new announcements up front, big updates down lower, release dates down lower, kind of in a general order of importance, but still kind of arbitrary. The first one that I have listed here, we talked about last week and the week before, I believe. It was kind of, we were expecting to see this, not a surprise to see it. It was just a teaser. We did get confirmation of the existence of Persona 4 Revival, a remake of Persona 4 in the same vein as Persona 3 Reload. It was just a very short teaser with the same, familiar backing track, the familiar stack of television, tube type TVs. So it was all but confirmed before this. We were expecting to see it at the Xbox event. We saw it at the Xbox event. It'll be releasing for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Not a surprise. No date,
Yeah,
no other details.
I think there's it's still way too early to say anything about this game because they only show like maybe like barely like 7 seconds of like actual gameplay on it, maybe even shorter than that. But just the
Yeah, that's why
overall
they
look
called it a
of
teaser. But
yeah,
yeah.
just the overall look of it is like I've already for me personally, I really enjoyed the atmosphere and visuals of the original PS2 one, and the Golden remake on Vita was like it's still fine, but they kind of missed the point of like what the original visuals were going for because as people have already pointed out throughout the years, that like the color grading on the Golden versus the original PS2 release is vastly different. Golden is much more vivid and much more clear, which sort of betrays like the theming of the original
Fog
PS2
is
game,
missing.
where fog and mist was such a big narrative plot point of that game, which Golden just sort of removes entirely, which sucks. And you sort of get that with Persona 4 Revival already, where everything was bright and clear. The very first thing I said when when it was airing on the Xbox showcase when we were watching it in James's car was like, "This looks bright," which is, and that's not a good thing for me to say when it comes to like about Persona 4's
yeah,
visuals.
The
on
comparison
that.
I made was, man, it looks like Wind Waker HD.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. So we'll see. It was a sort of disappointing reveal as well, because when you compare it to the announcement and reveal of Persona 3 Reload, Persona 3 Reload showed off the first trailer of Persona 3 Reload showed off like that, like a shitload of characters in it and a release date right away. You saw a lot of in-game footage. This one is like, it felt like it's one of those trailers slash teasers that was made as part of like obviously whatever negotiations and contracts they had with Microsoft between Sega, Atlas, and them.
It
And these
feels like
kind
a
of like
hastily put trailer. It's
yeah,
like there's nothing. There's like nothing there.
To me, it kind of feels like, and this is probably what Josh is getting at, like Xbox is like, hey, we want to show that we have Japanese games, so Atlas, put together a trailer for us, and this is what they got.
yeah,
Just basically to obligate, just to say, yeah, we got it, we got Japanese games.
I was gonna say, I love my friends already making fun of this trailer. They were like, what if they sell the Mari DLC as an expansion pass like Persona 3?
They're calling it the DLC that sells the least of all time.
So there's already like in the teaser itself, there's already a big like there's already signs that it'll be the golden version of the game. Like they'll have the golden content at least in the game, because at the end of that trailer, it has like the tune of the backing BGM was Time to Make History, and Time to Make History was exclusive to Persona 4 Golden. So that's big indication that the golden content will be in the game. Hopefully Atlas and Sega does not try to pull what they did with Persona 3 Reload of having the expansion of Persona 3, the Fest content, be at the end of like this $25 to $35 expansion pass. I forgot however much it costed. It was way too much, because if you wanted to get that content, you had to get this expansion pass, and that was not included in the most expensive version of that game that you could get. And a lot of that expansion pass was just like costumes and things, and at the very end was like the new remade Fest thing, which is like the only thing that you really cared about, really. And that was definitely one of the scummiest things like I've seen them pull off.
I remember Persona 3 Reload had both the expansion pass and the digital deluxe edition, but the digital deluxe edition did not include the expansion pass. Something like that.
Right.
Yeah, so it was kind of like double annoying, right? So
yeah,
they even had a premium edition which was like above the deluxe edition, which also did not include it. So even if someone spent like 100 or 110, I forgot how much it was, they had to still get the expansion pass separately.
Yeah, and the argument was, oh, we didn't start developing it until later. And it's like, I don't believe that for a second, dude. Don't.
Other Japanese developers are definitely not going to add season passes to remakes of beloved original games that didn't have DLC content to begin with. That'll never happen with other games that are releasing.
Gung-ho.
So yeah, it just man, that put a really sour taste in my mouth. So we'll see the Persona 4 revival. Hopefully they don't pull that trigger.
Now, this might seem a little arbitrary, but not watching Summer Games Fest live or being there, when I was following up on all the trailers and new announcements, this was the one that I think stood out to me because it was the biggest surprise here. And this is a new game from Game Freak. Obviously the longtime developer of the Pokemon series. They've branched out from Pokemon previously. This isn't a first thing, but I wasn't expecting this style of game from them. Game Freak and publisher. Go ahead.
I just want to I love how like so many people I know saw the Game Freak logo and was like, that doesn't seem like a Game Freak game. Then they saw the very next moment where it was like the frame rate was terrible. It's like, yeah, now I believe it.
Yeah, so the game is Game Freak and Publisher Fictions have announced Beast of Reincarnation for Xbox, PC, and PS5 coming to 2026. It is kind of like the game that it gives me the most vibes for are for Wild Hearts, in terms of it's got a Monster Hunter like feel. It's got a different, like it's set in like the year 4000, but it has like a combination of like feudal Eastern atmosphere, but also some tech like robots, mechs, things like that. So it's doing like an anachronistic combination of different styles or different eras. But James is right that it's a combination of cinematics and some like pre-development gameplay. It's one of those things where it's like Game Freak discovered what textures are, but the performance is also, oh, yep, that's Game Freak. But independent of that, trying to be a little bit more of an optimist, I did think that the vibes of the trailer were pretty fun.
It looks good. Yeah, I'm excited to try it out.
Yeah, I noticed this at the announcement. I was looking at the director of this game, and the director is Kota Furushima, and this is like the person responsible for involved with the battle planning for like Pokemon games such as Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, and Sword. So I'm interested in having that role of like battle planning, like what they can do, like the directorial role, because this is a lot of like Elden Ring, Night Rain, for example, in terms of, like FromSoft had the Elden Ring like battle director be the director on like that spin-off game for Elden Ring. So this has like a very interesting, like somewhat similar lineage in that regard, where this is kind of like an interesting thing to put on their resume, and how that translates into like what the overall game might look like in general. Sorry, Adam, I cut you off.
Well, this game was originally announced, like pre-announced, as Project Bloom, and it was a collaboration between Game Freak and Private Division back when Private Division was still owned by 2K or Take-Two. And since then, Private Division has been like offloaded to some investment company. I don't even remember. It's no longer under Take-Two. And Fictions is actually a brand new publisher. I think it's like, the staff there is pretty small. I wrote it in the article. I don't have it in front of me here, but this is one of the very first like games that they picked up for publishing. This and a Lego game. Lego, what was it? Lego Worlds, something like that. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting situation where Game Freak is kind of stretching what they can do with a publisher that kind of picked up the project, a brand new publisher from Private Division. So it's kind of an interesting, basically, laying of events that led to this where it is right now.
Yeah, it's definitely one to keep an eye on for sure. It's one of the more striking things that came out of the Xbox showcase out of nowhere. It's like, whoa, like what's going on? So I'm very excited to see. Like, and obviously, as you mentioned, Game Freak is largely known for Pokemon, but there are interesting like side projects that they do outside of Pokemon.
Like Trolldozer.
Embo, the badass elephant, or
There you
whatever
go.
it was.
Yeah,
Lego Party is what I was thinking of, was the other
Lego
game.
Party.
Yeah, the one that's very transparently just like a Mario Party, but for Lego. It looks good.
Right now, you're interested in the other Lego game that's like a co-op adventure one. That one seems really neat.
Oh yeah, I really want to play it. It's the one where you're like two little like studs, and then you have to like, yeah, it looked really neat.
Love it.
Another announcement, this is not one that I was expecting, is that we got a new project from Owlcat Games. We just a few weeks ago we talked about their newest CRPG in the Warhammer 40K universe, and we thought that that's what they're working on. They're still working on a few more DLCs for Rogue Trader. They've got the new project coming out, but turns out they've got another. Oh, we've also talked about how they're publishing like 3 or 4 different projects as well.
Shadow of the Road, I believe, were some of the things they were publishing.
Yeah, but they are also working on a game, and again, they're borrowing from a larger IP here, which has kind of been a go-to for them, of course, with Pathfinder, with Warhammer. Now with The Expanse, long series of novels has had, I believe, an Amazon adaptation. I forget the publisher, but a series adaptation. Owlcat Games has announced that they are developing and publishing The Expanse: Osiris Reborn, and they have an announcement trailer, which is about 2/3 like cinematics, that followed by a little bit of like I forget if they call it like pre-alpha, pre-beta development gameplay. And the immediate comparison that my mind made, that other people made, was Mass Effect.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
So they literally have Mass Effect in the press release. They say
There you go.
the original Mass Effect trilogy was absolutely an inspiration to the team. It was iconic for the Xbox 360 generation of gamers. Many of us first played it in our teenage years, and it left a lasting impression. We are building on that legacy and expanding what players anticipate from this experience. Our story is deeply rooted in hard science fiction, and so on and so forth. But they basically say, yeah, we love Mass Effect. We wanted to make our own. Which,
That was from a game design producer, Yulia Cherenko.
yes.
Yeah, or Chernenko, sorry.
How does it make you feel that people that played Mass Effect as teens are now making their own games?
That's fucking awesome. I'm
Yep.
glad that people are, were inspired by that. We definitely, there is like, it feels like there is a little bit of a void of like, hey, we need like some cool sci-fi third-person shooters, more of them out. And it's cool to see that they're doing it with The Expanse. I hear a lot of good things about The Expanse. I haven't watched it myself, but maybe I'll get interested in it for this game.
I have the first book on my bookshelf, but I just haven't ever
Okay.
started it. So I'm like, yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's the premise seems fun. We get an introduction to like 3 characters that are like exploring like a derelict. I forget if it's like a spaceship or a space station. We get a little bit of glimpse of like combat, and it's got like cover combat. Obviously, this is just like an initial announcement teaser. So in terms of like how RPG it is it going to be more Mass Effect 1 or more Mass Effect 2? Up to interpretation. But I will say that Owlcat has the I don't know if legacy is too strong a word, but they have the portfolio to show that they've made, quote unquote, the hard RPGs, like, RPG-ass RPGs. So I think it's in good hands if you're looking for a game that does still lean into that while giving you that real Mass Effect 1 feel. I'm optimistic. Where I'm not optimistic is also Owlcat has the history of releasing pretty buggy games. So I'm like, well, hopefully this game comes out with a good level of polish because I think people who jump into this who aren't fans of CRPGs, isometric turn-based games, but are fans of like Mass Effect action RPGs, and if it's similarly like kind of rough around the edges, I don't know how flexible people will be to see that.
yeah,
But
I'm excited. Like you, I'm excited and also a little bit concerned because like I feel like I don't really know. Like, it's cool that Alcap Games is expanding. Like, it feels like tremendously, both in like the amount of ongoing projects they're doing at any given time, but also they have a new publishing arm as well. So they have the ongoing support of Rogue Trader. You have the new Dark Heresy game for Warhammer. You have now The Expanse. Then like the publishing of Rue Valley and Shadow of the Road, and I think there might have been one or two other things they're publishing. But it's just like I don't we don't know Alcat Games historically as like this sort of studio that can like juggle all these plates, but maybe they've grown to the point that they can. Like hopefully they're able to manage this well and have like way less buggy launches for these games. I assume obviously on the publishing side of it, I assume those games that they're publishing are like they're not like bug testing them or debugging them themselves. I'm sure those development teams or studios are doing it on their side, but in terms of like Dark Heresy and now this Expanse game, it's like you're juggling so many plates. Can you do this?
it's kind of weird because I once saw someone describe like I saw people talking about the announcement of this game because it kind of drew a few heads. And they're like, oh, they're known for these isometric CRPGs. They're Larian's biggest like contemporary. But I just think of Alcat and Larian, and it's so different. Larian like puts all of their eggs in a single basket and they like polish the shit out of it. Like I don't do we know what Larian's working on right now? I'm not exactly
Nope, not
other
yet.
than continuing to update Baldur's Gate 3. And even that came out buggy. So I say polish the shit out of it. But when it launched, I know Act 3 was kind of a mess. But like Owlcat has this like very different approach where they put these games that are really like impressive in terms of scope, very ambitious, but not quite there in terms of, at least not initially, in terms of being deployable, coming in very hot. So it's just like it's interesting to see the 2 different approaches from these studios that are kind of occupying a similar space in terms of the types of games they work on.
Yeah, and also like Alcat Games don't usually put things on like early access too. I know Baldur's Gate 3 was in early access for some time. I'm trying to think about the Divinity games if they ever went into like an early access sort of period.
Yes.
They did.
I know
Divinity
Divinity
Original
2
Sin 2
did.
was, yeah.
Okay. So yeah,
And
so
Divinity 1 was, I don't think it was early access, but it was like crowd-funded free alpha or whatever you call it.
yeah, so Larian does like do like extended periods of like early access, where Owlcat Games don't really do that.
So we don't know much more about The Expanse, Osiris Reborn. We know the PC. We know it's PC, Xbox, PlayStation. But no release date and no other details. But in terms of like an initial showing and a surprise, they just announced a game and now a month later they announced another one. Impressive just to see that, and surprising. And obviously we're going to be keeping tabs on both. I've become kind of an Owlcat fan, despite not scoring their games very well. I'm just interested in seeing what they're doing, what they're working on, and the pace at which they work.
Devin and Larian are like the biggest CRPG prominent developers right now in the market. Keeping the dream alive for CRPGs as we know it.
Well, we'll be talking about this a little bit, and actually, I might just use that to go into the next two games here. I'm going to go out of order in our little outline here because I remember it's a few years old now, but when Microsoft over the last several years, lots to talk about with Microsoft, some good, a lot bad. But when under their banner, they had Bethesda, Obsidian, and In Exile, it was like the grognard in me is like the possibilities. They could do like a CRPG style Fallout. They could do like In Exile game like Wasteland 3 only with a super high budget or whatever. The possibilities are endless. But instead, we know what Obsidian and In Exile are working on, and it's not that. I'll just start out here. We knew that we were going to get a big presentation on the Outer Worlds 2. Microsoft basically said we're going to have a direct, and then we're going to have a Outer Worlds 2 presentation. They explicitly said that. So we got a big new look at Outer Worlds 2, of course, a sequel to Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds 2 is going to be coming out on all platforms, so it's not Xbox exclusive. It's coming out for
For
Xbox,
$80.
and PC on October 29th. Yes, it is $80. It seems like we very quickly have gone from 60 to 70 to 80 in terms of US dollars, at least. It showed off a big gameplay trailer. Of course, they showed off a lot of this on their presentation for it. Much bigger game in scope. Speaking of Private Division, to tie all these threads together, of course, the first game was started before Obsidian was acquired by Microsoft. It was being published by Private Division, not by Microsoft. I don't know, if it got like a later edition, if the publishing hand changed, like the nuances of that past release, things like that, the DLCs. So this one has a different creative team behind it. The director, I'm forgetting his name, but the first one was like Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky. And they were like RPG. They've been in the game for forever, but they're not working on Outer Worlds 2. So Outer Worlds 2 is like a bigger game. It's a different game. And it's weird because like Outer Worlds 1, when it released, kind of got a really lukewarm reception. I thought it was like, it's fine. Some people liked it a little more, some people liked it a little less, but it didn't set the world on fire. So Outer Worlds 2 kind of carries that with it, and it's showing and saying that it's bigger and better, but it just feels very different too to me. So I'm interested in it, just like I'm interested in all these like first person RPGs, but I just don't know, like the connective tissue between 1 and 2 feels a little bit different from a normal first second entry in a series to me. And I don't know if there's a good contemporary to like compare to, because it's just so different from other development situations between the first and second game of a series. You could talk about like Baldur's Gate 2 and 3, but then you got several years between those, things like that. But coming out October 29th. Did they say if this is going to be on Game Pass?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm trying to. So it is. So
so
at least if you have that, you can pay for the privilege that way.
right.
It's pretty clear that the $80 is being used as like a cudgel to be like, look how much value Game Pass gets you. It's like nobody is going. Well, not nobody, but like, let's be real here. How many people are interested enough in a sequel to the Outer Worlds 1, which again, like you said, some people liked it. I liked it. I didn't $80 like it. I don't know many people that $80 liked it. I feel bad for Obsidian because, it's not a great situation.
I feel a lot for Obsidian in this case, in the way that they're like, it's cool that like Microsoft kind of gave them front and center, but with a big asterisk on it. Like, there are several interviews about Outer Worlds 2 that came out that kind of talked to the studio about it, and then they basically said, it's not our call to on the price, that y'all talk to Xbox about it. We don't
Which
determine
is
the price.
very clearly telling, yeah.
So that's kind of the prevailing situation and talk and conversation about this game. It's not so much about what they showed off on the Outer Worlds 2 in terms of gameplay and like if you like if it was cool or not. It's like, hey, guess what the price of this game is? That's kind of the prevailing conversation around this game, and that's not a great place that you want to be in as Obsidian Entertainment about this game, I imagine. Um, so what can you really say at this point? I mean, yes, Microsoft already did kind of foreshadow it, but I don't think many people thought it was gonna be Outer Worlds 2 as the frontliner for this strategy that Nintendo greenlighted.
Yeah, there's some games that can get away with $80. GTA 6 will be able to get away with it. Mario Kart got away with it, though that has an asterisk. How many people actually paid $80 for Mario Kart, and how many people actually will? Yeah,
I would not play $80, but I got it for technically $50 on my Switch too.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's like Zelda probably can get away with it. It's like
Kirby
Elden Ring 2. Like Elden Ring 2, when that eventually happens, will probably get away with it if they were so inclined. But
yeah,
Outer Worlds 2, no, that's just not going to work. Like even $70 is pushing it for Outer Worlds 2, let alone 80.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like other $80 releases in the future, and like Kirby and the Forgotten Land plus the new Switch 2 exclusive content is like together is $80. But if you already have Kirby, it's additional $20. So you're still effectively spending 80. It's just like you spent 60 before and then an additional 20 now.
I mean,
I just think it looks bad that you have like a new Donkey Kong game which costs less than old Kirby and Mario Party games. It just looks weird from the outside. Like, I mean,
it's because they know that it's been so long since they've had a like proper like Donkey Kong 3D platformer that they could not push 80. And it's even worse because like in any region that isn't the US, the digital version is $10 less.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. And yeah, like going back to the Outer Worlds too, I don't know, I had a bad feeling about Avowed being 70. I like the game. I just don't think it should have been 70. And I feel like Outer Worlds 2 is gonna suffer the same fate because most of the discussion with Avowed pre-release at least was just a lot of saying that why is it 70, and then Microsoft pulled the thing where I know this doesn't really matter much on Xbox to most people. It does to me, but it doesn't to most people. The Avowed physical release was just like a code in box, and they're doing the same thing for Outer Worlds 2 on Xbox, but PlayStation gets a disc apparently. So that's apparently how Microsoft operates.
That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
Wild. That's wild.
The same thing's happening with, obviously not an RPG, but the same thing's happening with that Gears of War remake. So apparently Gears of War Reloaded is just getting a PlayStation 5 physical release, not Xbox. So that's pretty crazy.
Weird.
We're literally at the point where, especially as far as third parties are concerned, the only platform that's still getting proper physical releases is PlayStation. Because like besides like Xseed and CD Projekt, and Nintendo, there's nobody releasing like proper physical releases for Switch 2. It's all game key cards.
Yeah, NIS America doing that is absolutely shocking to me. But we'll get to that when we go to.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
We're gonna get to it like in a bit.
I'm gonna tear them a new one. What the fuck, guys?
Yeah, we're gonna get into that in a little bit. But yeah, for now, Outer Worlds 2, we have the release date as Brian mentioned, October 29th. It's gonna be retailing for $79.99 USD. Unless you have Game Pass, you can go play it through there. Everything they showed about Outer Worlds 2 looks like a step up from the first game for sure, but it's heavily marred by this conversation about its price, unfortunately, and that's and it's understandably so, because the economy is not doing anyone any favors as time goes on, and paying $80 on day one is it's a tougher ask more than ever, let's say.
You just saw their highlights. I don't think none of these are surprising, but it does have third person now. I forget if third person was ever added to the first game. It's the sort of thing that I don't pay attention to because I play them in first person. But I do know that when it were released, it was a criticism that it didn't have third person. Unless you kept your character still, and eventually the camera would rotate around your character like idly, but playing it in third person wasn't an option. Also, no romance. The first game didn't have romance. Avowed didn't have romance. This one doesn't have romance. Doesn't seem like something that Obsidian typically includes, at least in their more recent games. So not
I
a surprise,
appreciate
but
it.
I know they're being very clear about it, which is what I appreciate. And I don't think the first game, as lukewarm as it was, I don't think romance played a factor in that. And actually, one of its best stories did involve romance, but it was with an NPC, Pravarti,
Yeah.
and another character. It didn't involve the player at all. But those are the two things I know people were curious about for the next game. One thing that also seems a bit different is the first game obviously was built kind of on a budget. So what it was is when you went to talk to a character, it would kind of go into like a higher textured model, like you almost like an adventure game of the character speaking to you like face to face. And now it seems like the character dialogue system is a little bit more diegetic, where you go to them and they just talk. There's no transition to this like different perspective. So, and that I think is just clearly an indication of the budget and the development time. Actually, like Outer Worlds 1 released what, 2020? Outer Worlds 1 release date.
I remember I
This
did
one,
a
this
preview event for it before COVID hit. So it's like, yeah, it must have been like either 2019 or
2019.
20. Yeah.
So this one's been cooking a while. We'll keep it at that. And then the other game, like I think of them as a contemporary, of course, also under the Microsoft banner, In Exile. A game that they've been working on. They definitely seem like a one game at a time studio. They've been working on for a while. Is Clockwork Revolution, and they showed off a new trailer for that. Clockwork Revolution has always felt like it's a little bit further out. I think on one of their very first trailers, they said release date when it's ready. So that's kind of the stance they're taking, and the stance they're still taking. They still haven't given details on its release, I don't believe. But we did get a pretty lengthy trailer. It was like 6 minutes long. It's a combination of story, gameplay, how to play. It talks about the time travel. It talks about the weapon building system, and I don't know if they're as straightforward about this as the Owlcat team in terms of Mass Effect being an inspiration, but I think it's hard, at least for me, to look at Clockwork Revolution, and it gives me as memeable as it is, the BioShock Infinite vibes. You know, risking the
Definitely.
like, I've seen Boss Baby, gives me Boss Baby vibes or whatever, but it's got the same like gear punk aesthetic. It's got like a similar art style, obviously a first person perspective game. But again, also like, I'm not just sure what to expect from this because I'm not an NXL expert. I've played um what's the name? Wasteland 3. I blanked on it for a second. And I played the original Fallouts, which have a lot of the same talent. Obviously, that wasn't NXL at the time. So how that will translate to like a first-person RPG or RPG style game, I just don't know for sure. Because even though this is a lengthy trailer, it doesn't give us a lot of insight into like long-term progression, resource management, all the RPG like nuts and bolts that we like to talk about
I
here.
think they did
And
their
those are
best
hard
with the trailer. Yeah, that's definitely hard to
they
showcase in
did.
the trailer. Yeah.
They do show a lot of like the gun like weapon like smithing, and it does remind me a little bit of very different game, a little bit of like Resonance of Fate, where you can just like, yeah, you can put like 18 scopes or 3 barrels on a single gun. I don't know if it goes that crazy, but it just
It
it does
should
remind me of
though.
that a little bit.
Every game should be like that, if we're being honest. The only thing that was
Mhm.
working against Resonance Fate is it didn't actually reflect that in the model itself. It was just like stats, but it really should have. Yeah, I mean, it just felt out of place in the Microsoft showcase because of the length of the trailer. Not to say that there was anything bad with the trailer, just like oddly long compared to like everything else that was shown before and after
Mhm.
it. But it's cool that like they got a lengthy look at it, and for people what to expect all in real time gameplay that they showed. Um, the and they like you said, didn't have a release date. They just said in due time, I believe, at the end of that trailer. That's it. But it's cool that it's like shaping up. It's definitely one of those games that I wanna definitely play. It has a lot of interesting hooks in it. With the whole time manipulation and the whole aesthetic to it, and they showed like a decent enough about like its systems, given what they got to kind of get my ears perking.
Well, in a similar vein, this was actually shown at the PC gaming show because this is being developed by Aspire. They're working on Neverwinter Nights 2 Enhanced Edition, which will be releasing in about a month, July 15th, for PS5, Xbox, Switch, and PC. Of course, originally developed by Obsidian, there's the tie there, but has it's kind of a black spot for me because I've played a lot of these like isometric style games from Obsidian being one of my favorite developers, but I never played Neverwinter Nights 2. And Obsidian themselves called it out when they first announced Outer Worlds 2, or not first announced, but when they said like they made uh Knights of the Old Republic 2, Neverwinter Nights 2, Fallout 3 2, being New Vegas, things like that. So this is obviously one of the games they're proud of. But the remaster is coming in next month. It's releasing with all expansions on all platforms, including Switch. They did not Switch 2 though, just Switch. So it'll be interesting to see how that works on a handheld console. But this is a game I'm interested in, just kind of for like my RPG edification, so to speak. Though I also hear that if you get into it, playing this game can be like several hundreds of hours. So I'm not sure like how deep I want to be into it. But that's just how these games go sometimes, especially once they have years of expansions added onto them. But yeah, that was announced at the PC gaming show. I think it's cool for maybe not quite preservation's sake, but in a similar vein, making it more accessible across consoles and PC. And hopefully will support, modern configurations, widescreen, HD, HDR, all those sorts of things.
It is kind of interesting that it's Aspire now and not Beamdog.
Yeah.
Because Beamdog did the original. I mean, the original Enhanced Edition.
Because Beamdog for a while they were like making custom expansions to these games, but then that experiment fizzled out. I'm not sure. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, sorry. It's cool that they're also supporting crossplay with this when you're playing with your friends, so you're not locked to a platform, and also that just having the conveniences of like, hey, they're redesigning the UI to be more control, like specifically for control, like people using controllers. They'll have a UI for controller specific players. So it's just cool to see like these long ass CRPGs could be a challenge these days for many people to like just sit down in front of a desktop and just play keyboard and mouse. Just like having this more of a couch friendly sort of game to play online with your friends, no matter the platform. It's like if I was way younger, I'd be fucking stoked. Holy shit!
I might have exaggerated
what's
a little
notable.
bit, but not completely. How long to beat? Neverwinter Nights 2 completionist, 147 hours. Go ahead, Mikhail.
Yeah, so bringing up Beamdog is interesting because when they did the like Baldur's Gate 2 and they did like Icewind and all that stuff, it's weird because you have the games on mobile, you have the games on console, and you have the games on PC. As far as I'm aware, the PC version never got controller support. The console versions and Switch versions specifically did not get touchscreen support. The mobile versions only have touchscreen support. They don't have controller support. So now that Aspire is doing it, everything is going to have controller support, and they likely will bring it to mobile later, like they do with all their other projects as well. So that's going to be interesting to see because they have crossplay now. So I'm curious how that ends up being. And also whether I don't know if it's gonna be possible for them to do it, but wasn't Neverwinter Nights 2 on Steam in some platinum edition or some form? I never owned it, but I wonder if they'll do like a loyalty discount, like a 10 or 20% off for owning
I don't
that.
think Neverwinter
Because
Nights was ever on Steam, too. I think it was on PC, but I don't think it was ever on Steam. I don't know if it's on GOG. I'm not
it is
sure.
on
I'll
GOG.
Google
It is
that.
on GOG. It is on GOG.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I vaguely heard someone mention something about it being on Steam before, but I never got it, so I don't know. But yeah, I was just curious if they'd offer something like that. But I'm definitely up for trying this because I kept thinking whether I should buy it on GOG or not, but then I'm really lazy with some of these games and I want controller support, so now I'm gonna get that, I guess.
And I think that kind of covers us for like Xbox adjacent RPG, at least the heavy hitters in terms of what they showed at their showcase. And I know Neverwinter was at the PC gaming show, but has that Obsidian tie-in right there. Here's one that we knew was coming because they kind of gave an announcement of an announcement. So this one's, I think, divorced from anything Summer Games Fest, but was just announced, in the last week. We knew we were going to get a release date for Atelier Resleriana, The Red Alchemist, and The White Guardian. The release date will be September 26th. It'll be coming out for Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, and PC. And in addition to that, we got a first look trailer for this, and it's also a pretty long trailer. I'll be honest, I didn't watch this, but I do know that this is unlike Atelier Yumiya. This is a more traditionally turn-based game, and even though it has Atelier Resleriana in its title, it is a traditional pay game, not free-to-play game. Though I do know, Josh, you had pointed out something about it having an unexpected tie to the mobile game in terms of characters. I might be misinterpreting, but I saw something when I was reading through either general chat or staff chat. I forget exactly what.
I was just reading a Japanese interview, and like the events of this game still take place in the same world as the Resleriana mobile game, but it's like in a different region. But the two protagonists in it, like Resna and Valeria from the mobile game, apparently do show up in this game as like quote unquote key characters. The person that you were interviewing in the for this game. So it's one of those things that's like you won't be like super lost or anything if you've never played the mobile game. I don't think that's the case at all. But like having context for at least some of the mobile game might like you might have like better appreciation for some of the things that go on this game. Maybe. So, it's like a
All right,
bonus
Josh. So here's the question of the day.
Uh-huh.
When they eventually release a Atelier Resleriana offline, that's the version of the mobile game that's offline. Are they going to actually localize it this time, and or is it going to be like Seal No Surge, and it's like we just never get it localized?
I mean, if they would have some of the work done for them because like whatever they had for the English release before it got end of service, but it's still alive in Japan. So do they want to localize the other story arcs that came after? I don't know. Who knows? That in this hypothetical, premium version, when that game finally shutters for good in all regions, I don't know. I mean, it'd be additional work, and maybe they don't like additional. It'd be great if they did, though. I think that was a cool game. Like in general, like in terms of like gameplay, not necessarily for gacha, but in terms of like gameplay and like in the story of it, like it was cool.
Yeah, most of my friends said that the gacha aspect is what ruined the game entirely.
Yep.
They just say it's a good game. It's just the gacha elements is just awful.
Yeah.
I'll play this.
But yeah, I mean this game looks cool. And they also mentioned in the interview like the battle system primarily is like
It's turn-based.
It's turn-based. It's like an evolution of like what was in Sophie 2. They specifically called out Sophie 2.
I should play Sophie 1 and 2 before this comes out if I have the time. I probably don't have the time.
Yeah. But unlike the mobile game that has like crossover characters of like a lot of Atelier characters, they have like only a specific handful here. You have Sophie and Totori in this game, along with Wilbel from Atelier Yisha, and then you have Raze from Mana Kamiya 2 question mark in this game as party members. So that's cool. I mean, I generally like the look and feel of this game, and it's very bright and vivid. Certainly an evolution from the Sophie 2. What they were started in Sophie 2. Apparently, there's like sort of like town building and in this game or town management. Of course, you're gonna have like a shop as well, and then the alchemy system looks very similar to what was in the mobile game, which is like it's color coded, mixing different colors, which has different effects on the output. It looks neat. Like it's one of those games that like I'm more interested in what this game is putting down over like what Yumiya like was showing, which like it's cool, but I think I like this flavor of Atelier more, and that's by like it's intentional because like they classify this as more of a classic Atelier experience, while Yumiya was more of like that more
modern,
modern next generation.
I will say though, neither here nor there, but with how well like already the Switch 2 is selling in Japan, I hope that Japanese developers just like abandon Switch 1 sooner than later. So games that use like Switch 2 as a base, everyone benefits.
Look, if they release on Game Keys or whatever the fuck they're called, it's like I am not buying them on physical. It's like even like Final Fantasy Tactics that's coming in like the Switch. It's like I'm buying the Switch 1 version and not the Switch 2 version just because the game that is not in the cart. So that's for me.
I forgot, but Yumiya didn't have an English dub, right?
No, they haven't had English subs for a long time. Yeah.
Okay, because this
I
also
even asked,
English dub.
I even asked about it, and he said that they would be interested in doing English subs in the future, but it's just one of those things where because they're prioritizing translating it to as many languages as possible.
Mhm.
They want to make sure that's basically the priority, and dubs obviously take a lot more
Yeah.
time. And
For sure.
considering that I'll give them credit. Ryza 3's simultaneous English release was bad. Yumiya's
Yeah.
translation was good. So you know
Good.
what?
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, and also I saw a lot of people like glad like, hey, we got to build protagonists again after how many years in an Atelier game?
Over a decade.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
And then here's another announcement that wasn't from Summer Games Fest, but just kind of aligned in the last week. Back in 2023, we had the release of Disgaea 7 Vows of the Virtuous. It's been pretty typical of the series to follow up with a complete edition a few years later. Nice America and Nipponichi have announced Disgaea 7 Complete, announced for this fall. I believe exclusively for Nintendo Switch 2. Is that correct?
Yes, that is
Yeah,
correct.
my little sidebar shows all the platforms, but it's for the original edition, version of the game, which did come out for PC and PlayStation. But Disgaea 7 Complete, as of right now, Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive. And the physical version of the game is a game key card. So there you have it.
So
And
so
then-
there's a few interesting and annoying things about this because when they did Disgaea 6, it was released on PlayStation 4 and Switch in Japan, and it was a timed exclusive for Switch in the
I
West,
vaguely
and
remember
then
this. Yeah.
yeah, and it ran like dog shit on Switch. So it's like you have a version which runs good, but you're still. I don't remember if it was on PS5 or not, but
It
either way,
was
it
on
was Switch
PS5.
only. Okay, so it was Switch only in the West, and it ran like dog shit. I still remember people were pretending it
Well,
ran
later,
fine and all,
later it
and
was on PS5. Yeah.
yeah, so anyway, the Switch version was like awful, and it was a huge step down after Disgaea 5 Complete, which was perfect on Switch. Obviously, like that's an older game, but yeah, this was annoying, and they eventually brought it to other platforms. It came everywhere. With this, the assumption was just that they'd bundle all the DLC and like sell it together or something because they did that last year in Japan. And like Nobunaga's Ambition, not an RPG, but what they did is they had a complete edition which came to Switch 2 and PS5 at launch, and everyone else got a free update and paid DLC, so no one was left behind with whatever DLC and features were releasing. They actually brought free graphics improvements to PlayStation for sorry, to PC. So with this, they are not just clubbing the DLC the original game got together. They're actually adding more content, which was available in Japan through an update and paid DLC, as far as I'm aware. But as usual with NIS America's deals they make, there's no information on that for existing owners on any platform. So I guess they want, and I think James posted about this on Blue Sky. Like, if you're doing a timed exclusive money hat deal or whatever you want and selling your physical for like $70, don't do a game key card. Like, what's the point?
We don't know. I deleted that because we don't actually know.
Oh, okay.
We don't know what the regular version is costing. We just know the limited edition is 100,
Oh, okay.
which, based off
Okay.
how they usually do things, it might be 70. It might be 60. Who knows?
Yep, good point.
Disgaea 6 Complete was 70, so I wouldn't be shocked if this is 70. It would make sense, but this is, again, this released last year in Japan as an update. It was like a $5, like, to get the new story stuff, it was like a $5 DLC. And then they also had like a version that was available in Japan, obviously, that came with all of the other DLC. So this is that version that came with the update plus the extra DLC, but they're just not releasing the update for the PlayStation or PC versions, or even the original Switch version for that matter. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? And the fact it's a game key card, it's like, dude.
Yeah, this is going to be the first
Yeah.
Disgaea physical release I skip since getting into the series on Vita. Like when I got my Vita and I bought Disgaea 3, I think I bought every single release since then on whatever platforms I could. I love
And-
the series, but
okay,
yeah, not
so-
happening with this.
So to be fair, at least as far as the game key card is concerned, from your interview with Xseed, very specifically, they said they had to convince the Japan side to let them do a full physical release on Switch 2. I would not be surprised if Nisa tried to get a full game card for Disgaea 7 Complete, but Japan said no. That would be on brand for NISJ, so we don't know for sure. We don't have any insider information, but considering what other companies have said and past this prologue, I don't know if this is Nisa's fault that's a game key card or if it's NISJ's fault. And we probably won't know, because if it was NISJ's fault, Nisa would never say it, because that would be throwing their own parent company under the bus.
I think I'm trying to remember for sure if Disgaea 6's original release was distributed by NIS America or it was distributed by Nintendo. Because when they did the deal for SNK Heroines on Switch, where the PlayStation 4 version was digital or you buy the collector's edition, that physical release was actually distributed by Nintendo for NIS America. So that's something which we'll have to see when the listings go up on normal storefronts like Amazon and Best Buy and stuff like that. But right now there are too many unknowns for this. It just is a disappointing announcement, because if they just did what Koei Tecmo had for Nobunaga's Ambition, everyone would have been like, okay, we can still upgrade. We've spent this had like $100 edition as well digitally when it came out originally. So yeah, disappointing all around.
And we don't know the exact date, just that it'll be this year in the West. A few other kind of smaller scale announcements. This one's more of a tease than anything. And we already knew this is for Namco Bandai. I'm just noticing here on our sidebar, we have publisher Bandai Namco, developer Namco Bandai. So I'm not sure which way is right. I always forget which way is right anymore.
I mean, this is because it's attached to the Xillia entry, so that might have been during the era
Oh,
where
back
they had
then.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we know that they've been kind of focusing on remastering Tales of series entries for a while now. And there will be a new announcement in the remaster series, so to speak, at some point this summer. So we got just a little bit of a tease saying that the next entry will be remastered. We've in the past kind of, predicted it's going to be Zilla or it's going to be
Abyss.
Legendia or something. But
Yeah.
but no idea. Hopefully it's not
They-
Symphonia again.
When I asked about this, like literally last year when I was previewing, was it last year or was it this year? I think it. When was
that came out this year, like January?
Yeah, so when I was previewing it, I think in December, I had a chance to ask them about like if there was any like, hey, are there any games that are just like off the table entirely? And they said no. In fact, they would like down the line to do stuff like, say, like Innocence R that never came to the West. So that would be interesting. Probably not now, but in the future.
I mean,
We had someone make a listicle of what we'd like to see, right? Of remaster games, and always on there is like top of the list games that were never officially localized would of course be, the greatest value. And then go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never stop just rooting for Eternia being the one to get re-released. That's that's my favorite one. So therefore, I think it should be that one. But I can definitely see it like if they're going by popularity and well regarded by fans, if they're popular, if they're prioritizing those like how they did for Grace's F, I think it makes a lot of sense. Like Abyss is next. Like,
Yeah, Abyss, because like the 3DS version's now no longer available, and it was already a kind of compromised one. And just based off of what that was, they'd have to do a totally new one. So
yeah, so I like my if I was like putting my professional hat on, I would think it's Abyss. Though like Zillia like would be interesting too, but I wonder if they do Zillia, I'd hope they like bundle in both games instead of like releasing them one by one.
Yeah.
They're more like straight remasters like Grace's F. I would hope they'd have both packs ready to go right away together, or at least very close to each other in terms of release. But ideally a bundle. So we'll see. I mean, it's cool that like this is around the corner. Hopefully they won't wait too long. I can imagine if I was thinking of like what is the most likely event they're gonna announce this for, like maybe Anime Expo. I can see.
I don't think Bandai Namco has a panel about their games.
They might have yet to announce it because they're usually. I forgot if Bandai Namco usually they usually have a panel for at Anime Expo. I'm remembering the Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yeah, because Because the reason I'm saying is I was like looking through the AX schedule literally yesterday to figure out like any conflicts with stuff, appointments I have scheduled that I can't talk about. But I don't remember seeing one. I'd have to double check, but
Yeah, maybe the idea of just yet to like announce it yet, and maybe like I don't know if it's too early or too close. Like I forgot exactly when they announced their Anime Expo panels and how close they are to the event because they usually do one every.
Yeah. Well, usually NIS America does one too, and they definitely didn't have one listed. And they're not even, well, they're probably going to be there because the last couple of years they've been in the entertainment hall, but they haven't been listed yet. So that's
Yeah, that would be unusual. They don't do it because I imagine they want to promote Trails Beyond the Horizon.
Yep. And plus, they get a lot of foot traffic at their booth to sell stuff. So I'm sure they're going to be in the entertainment hall at like an absolute minimum. The entertainment hall stuff just hasn't been uploaded yet. The last I checked, maybe it has today. I don't know, but yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure within like the next week, maybe sometime this week, they'll start announcing, hey, we'll be having our event at Anime Expo at this day and date.
This next one's just a little bit of a small update, though I think it is a nice one for those that are interested. Suikoden Star Leap. This is from Konami. Previously announced free-to-play game in the Suikoden series coming out for mobile. They've also announced that it will also be coming to Steam worldwide in addition to its release on iOS and Android. So if you're interested in Suikoden Star
Yay!
Leap, you now have an additional option to play it on PC.
Are we excited?
I know Adam is.
I mean, sure. I mean, that's cool. That was one of the first things I was like, they should release this on PC too, because everyone's fucking doing it these days. So it's glad to see, that they're gonna release it on Steam. I'm more likely to kind of give these games a chance if they have a PC version because I like having them. I like using control keyboard and
Are you
mouse.
gonna be playing Persona 5: The Phantom X since it's gonna be on Steam?
Yep, I'm sure I am. Like I said, I will give these games a shot. I usually play a good chunk of them. Like I usually play all the launch content that they release because I usually get done with them before their first content update. So I put time into them for sure. But whether I stick around or I get bored because I'm waiting for the next update, who knows? That's usually the downfall of these games is because of their live service nature. If you leave me too bored till the next update, I usually fall off. There's like the city that have in Wuthering Waves. Like it's cool. Like I enjoy the gameplay, but what I'm doing day to day is kind of not interesting. And then by the time the next content update is there, I'm like fucking bored out of my mind. Like
I finally stopped playing Pokemon TCG Pocket because of a similar thing where it's like it wasn't even like it was taking too long. It's like they were just throwing way too many packs way too quickly. And I know a bunch of people that were like falling into that where it's like, I still like this, but man, overwhelmed.
Yeah, what happened? So yeah, I mean, I'll play Persona 5, the Phantom X, and whatever. And if it's fun enough to stick around, I'll do it. I mean, I still play the Madoka one. That's still I still wouldn't recommend it to everyone, but I still enjoy it. And the Gundam one, I'm on the brink of just uninstalling because I'm getting bored of it. Like I've got fallen into that hole where it's just it's taking way too long for stuff to come out for it that's interesting. So that's how it is.
Couple other trailers for some upcoming games. This one is one I was interested in seeing more of this, but when I watched the trailer, I think I got a little bit deflated. Not to poison the well. This is for an upcoming open world RPG called The Blood of Dawnwalker. I don't remember this. We got a introductory cinematic trailer back earlier this year. This is from a new developer, Rebel Wolves. They have a lot of I believe ex CD Projekt talent on this team. And this is a game that's kind of built in the vein of The Witcher, but instead of being Witchers, it's vampires. They had a pretty fun, kind of interesting cinematic trailer earlier in the year, and then this is kind of like the first showing of gameplay, or at least gameplay in-engine footage. And it focuses a lot on the vampire aspect, though obviously the protagonist is not a vampire; he's a Dawnwalker. The idea is that he bridges the gap between the dark and the light or whatever. It's a little bit cheesy, but that's kind of how they're framing it. but I don't know if it's just the early gameplay or what. It's a decent amount of gameplay footage. It shows some combat, it shows some like parkour, it shows some like vampire abilities, and of course you get a lot of flavor in terms of like the voiceover and things like that. Uh, but I was watching this trailer and I kept thinking of like the game Vampire, VMPYR, a different style of game because this shows more like sword combat and things like that. But it has the same vibe as like all the other vampire games, and I felt like it doesn't stand out from this. I'm still interested in the game, but when I thought I'd be more excited to see gameplay for the first time than I was here. I'm not sure if it's the muted color palette. I don't know if it's just the ideas are a little too well worn, but that was my interpretation. Um, it's only slated for a 2026 release, PS5, Xbox, PC. And I'm still interested to see what Rebel Wolves does with their intro project here. But I thought the first gameplay showing wasn't the strongest. I'm not sure what I expected, but I didn't walk away more excited than I was.
Yeah, I really want to see this game just like in action, like let the gameplay speak for itself in terms of like I want to see someone like controlling the game or like a demo of it to really kind of get a feel. Like apparently they have like another stream for this game coming on June 21st. That'll have like
Mhm.
15 minutes of new gameplay content accompanied by developer commentary, stuff like that. So I'm like, just I kind of just want to like give me like 20 to 25 minutes of just only gameplay. Just show me like a quest in the game, like picking up the quest, any dialogue options if there is, and like going and doing that quest. Like
That's a good
I
point
think
because this gameplay is like cut into a trailer format where you get
yeah.
3 seconds here, 2 seconds here, or 3 seconds here. When I just want to see, like you said, someone playing the game. That's a good point. But I
Mhm.
didn't know they were going to show it off again, so I guess I'll stay tuned for not too long for the
Yep.
extended gameplay look of the Blood of Dawnwalker. And I think this is they've stated that this is planned to be like a larger like IP. I'm looking back at some of the initial when we first learned that Bandai Namco actually is publishing this. Uh, that it was going to be like a multimedia project, or at least it was going to be like a trilogy. I'm trying to make sure I have like an actual.
That reminds me. You know what? This already has like some. When I hear that, I kind of get a little bit of red flags because Bandai
Yeah,
Namco just recently went down this well with another multimedia brand new IP called
Yeah,
Unknown Nine Awakening.
yeah, that story world, as they called it, that I don't really know anyone
And then the multimedia thing expanded to like a TV show or something, and then a podcast and like something
Why do
okay.
else.
I will.
why do they put all this money on these two multimedia projects instead of giving CyberConnect 2 money to do like a dot hack again? What's their fucking problem?
That's real actually. The real
I will
question.
walk it back a little bit. They haven't said multimedia, but they have said this is the first chapter of the Dawnwalker saga. So they're it's at least that. So they haven't
Uh,
specifically said multimedia though.
okay,
But
but
yeah, I'll keep an
still,
eye out for the gameplay showing to see if it kind of eases my concerns a little bit. But I'll probably play this game regardless. But yeah. And then this one, we're heavy into the marketing ramp up for one of the most anticipated games of the year. Actually, was it our most anticipated game for this year? The upcoming Trails in the Sky first chapter coming out in
Oh yeah.
September. The faithful remake of Trails in the Sky. We're
Good
getting a lot of
news. Some of the translation quirks on the website were fixed, so it seems like they've at least noticed that people are like, "Hey, what the hell's up with that?" And we should be fine for translation, even if it is more than an editing pass. So hopefully we're
and
good.
what that is for some context, it was like we saw that they used Sword Saint instead of Divine Blade. Instead of calling Silver Streak, they had a different name for her title, but they have all been corrected. We've gotten some trailers showcasing some of the voice actors and seiyus, and then we kind of teased this about an hour and a half ago. We got some interesting information. Like whenever a game's coming out, the publishers and developers very commonly, a lot of times we don't even cover them, talk about like a collector's editions, limited editions, pre-order bonuses, all those sorts of things. And usually it's like, yeah, you get a steel case, yeah, you might get a pin set or whatever. But this one was interesting because they've revealed that Trails in the Sky first chapter will have a season pass. I've not dug into this, but I remember seeing this headline. I'm like, wait, What? So
Yeah.
someone elucidate for me. Season pass for Trails in the Sky first chapter?
It's probably just going to be cosmetic stuff.
I mean, I hope
Hopefully.
so.
I mean, if it's anything but that, then if it's like actual story content, I'd be a lot more concerned. Right now, give them the benefit of the doubt because I don't know what's in it. Hopefully, it's just cosmetics. I'll be long done with the game by the time any of those cosmetics probably come out, so I won't care. Um, but yeah, if it's actually story stuff, I would not be enthused.
I would
let's
not
say.
be happy either.
Um, they shut off some several side characters in this round of news that was first revealed by Famitsu. They had
3D
Alan,
Annulate's real.
Amalthea, Morgan, Mayor Maybell, and her maid Lila or Lila. I believe it was Lila. And then of course fan favorite Annalise was revealed, and along with Grant, both bracers. A lot of people very, very, very excited to see the
Like
new design for
analysts and the
Annalise.
other bracer, whatever
Yeah,
his name was.
Grant. Hey, the not Adol, who looks even more like
Yeah.
Adol now. So yeah, as people have noted in the screenshots that were shown, there's like a specific screenshot from analysts that is with Shara and Olivier. That it looked like a brand new quest or some new content in this game, and they did confirm that like there will be some new quests in this game that was not in the original. So that's exciting as well. Seeing that there will
That
just
would
be
make
brand
sense if it's like other Trails games are probably going to reference those quests, which would make sense then why it would have to be a new translation, that being the case.
So I'm looking not to be a one-to-one thing, but with additional stuff, which is good to see. We also got like several trailers with the voices of Estelle and Joshua in multiple languages: English, Japanese, Chinese, both traditional and simplified, and Korean. So that's cool. Uh, there was also like some story scenes, especially the Joshua one. There's a specific story moment that I won't spoil here in Trails in the Sky first chapter that was shown in that trailer that got everyone very, very excited to see a little teaser of how they're going to depict that scene in this game and this new engine and all that stuff. So that's looking great. This like everything has been pretty much like awesome to see how this game is shaping up. Like it looks like Falcom has really, really, really gotten a handle on their new proprietary engine. It's really showing like the expressiveness and the
Yeah.
personalities of these characters in this remake.
Few other small trailers here. Two games that I kind of think of as contemporaries because we've been covering them for a while. These are two indie projects that are heavily inspired by some classic RPGs. We have Sacrifire. We've covered this game several times. It had a play test like about a year ago that had some critical feedback from those who played it. This is the one that's based on like Star Ocean style combat, like classic Star Ocean. It had a new trailer at the Future Game Show. I'm not sure if it has an available demo at Steam Next Fest. I don't see a note for it.
I don't think so.
It's
No.
slated to release Q1 of next year. Also, one of the big marketing bits for this is that it has a soundtrack from Sakuraba of Valkyrie Profile, old school Tales of fame. But this game has been delayed a few times, so hopefully they land on their 2026 date that they currently have planned. But we got another just little short trailer for that at the PC Gaming Show. Or sorry, at the Future Game Show. And then another game that we've kind of covered and has had a few different demos available is Demon School. And got a new kind of life of a demon school student because it takes place in a high school setting. And I remember I keep comparing to this to like, is it like Persona 2? But then I keep getting corrected, like, no, it's actually more like something else. But I forget what that something else was in terms of like the inspirations for this game. But it has kind of that horror adjacent aesthetic to it. But we've covered this one on the site since its announcement a while back at this point. I don't know if they have a new release window for this one.
December 2025 on that one. They said the final release date coming soon. This was a
Oh,
game that
so
like this was a game that was like supposed to come out like I think last year, but they were like they really wanted to. It would compromise the full potential of their vision if they were to release it last year. So they decided to delay it one more time, like one big delay to make sure that like they're super happy with the final without any compromises. So we'll see. Hopefully, it turns out well.
I'm actually looking at a PAX preview that you wrote
Mhm.
back in 2023, and apparently I'm clearing the cobwebs here. Comparisons were made to the character models to old school Persona games, and uh, um, the games director Brandon Sheffield was like, "Oh, sure, that wasn't the intent, but I can see it." Like, so that wasn't like clearly inspired. They just kind of ended up landing in the same place. So it looks like Persona, but Persona was not an explicitly an inspiration for the game. Italian horror was what I was forgetting in terms of the inspiration for the setting and the aesthetics. But yeah, summer 2025. So I guess this one might be pretty soon, but we don't actually have a date. But we might be hearing about that within the next couple weeks. And then this is an announcement that's kind of straddling two podcasts. Last week when we recorded, we just got the announcement of NetEase's free-to-play game Sea of Remnants, but we didn't really know much about it. Since then, they've shown a gameplay video of it. And of course, the interesting thing here is that it's a free-to-play game. Uh, I think I was trying to draw comparisons to Sea of Thieves, but I don't know if that's actually a valid comparison here. Based on the gameplay here, I'm not exactly sure what the comparison would be because it doesn't, even though it's got a nautical theme, most of the gameplay seems to be like third person action rather than like um seafaring, but there are some seafaring moments in the trailer. So I'm still not quite sure like exactly how this game plays, and especially like how it plays with respect to being a free to play game, monetization structure and things like that. But it'll be available on PC and PS5 in 2026.
Yeah, I remember the trailer for this game had like turn-based combat for
Yeah.
it. It's not an action game, and I
Oh,
believe
okay.
and I believe like you kind of I guess roll for characters in this game. So
It sucks because I was like really interested in it with the trailer, and then it came out that it was free to play. And it's like, oh,
yep. That's usually the common sentiment around. It's like, yeah, this game looks really cool. Oh, there's free to play. There's gotcha. Okay, cool. Best of luck.
And that's not absolutely every single trailer that was shown over the last week, but I think we kind of hit the main highlights. And as it always goes for any of these big events, like they'll get, these games will be platformed usually in some sort of digital event or sometimes a stage event. Then they'll have like a preview at maybe an exclusive to a specific website, or they'll have an interview, or they'll just drop something on a YouTube page. So we'll follow up if any of these games get like additional clarification, additional footage, or anything like that over the next couple of weeks. Of course, a lot of these games are slated to release in that September-October window. I know Adam put on Blue Sky just like all of a sudden September and October are very, very packed. We already kind of knew about things like Trails in the Sky First Chapter, but recently over the last 2 weeks, Digimon Story Time Stranger, Final Fantasy Tactics, Atelier Resleriana, Outer Worlds 2, Pokemon Legends, all in that
help.
time window within those 2 months. Yeah, help. So June and July, not quiet, but maybe relatively so. And then September and October, uh, things get real. Here's one that I think we're happy to see in terms of a sales update. We're expecting to see it. We're happy to see it. Fantasy Life-I, The Girl Who Steals Time, has hit the 1 million units sold milestone. We reported on like the 800K and the previous one, 500K.
Yeah,
We were saying hopefully 1 million within a few weeks, and there it is. Go ahead, James.
yeah. And like I was saying earlier, it seems to be selling really well on Switch 2 in particular as like an early launch title. So
Mhm.
probably gonna keep getting a decent number of sales from as people continue to pick that up, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it well deserved. It's a really good game. It's definitely going to be in contention for like by the end of the year, I would say. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's not the last you'll have heard of Fantasy Life I, even if we don't get any more sales milestones for a bit. I imagine again we'll probably won't be. I can't imagine it will be like more than like a month or two before we start hearing about like 1.5 or 2 million or whatever
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. So
It is kind of a de
Yeah.
facto launch game for the Switch 2.
It's cool to see how the power of word of mouth in
Mhm.
action.
Happy to contribute. Going into a few other just small announcements, usually involving some dates here.
Before
Final Fantasy.
before that, like there was an update for Fantasy Life I that did come out. That's like a pretty important one because it's a lot. This
Oh yeah,
allows you to
Mikhail mentioned that when he was writing his thing, and then it got launched like right after that. So yeah, go ahead, talk about the details.
They expanded the camera range, especially for zones like the Ginormosia open world zone and most of the story zones that you do in like the past version of that game. Like there's like a past, present, and the open world zone. So like there was a mod for it, like kind of expand the on PC to expand the camera out because it's too zoomed in both of the toggles that it lets you. But now it seems like they've rectified the problem in a more official capacity on all platforms. So you don't
Except for Switch and Switch 2. Those will be in a few days.
Oh, in a few days. Okay, so yeah, that's like a staggered patch thing. So for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, this is out. But for the Switch platforms, it'll be out very soon. So like people seem to like that official update that expands the camera zoom out, so people can see more. One thing that we noticed on your when you were testing out Fantasy Life-I on your Switch too, I was like, man, it really sucks that you can't disable depth of field like you can on the PC version. But apparently, in this new update, they allow you to disable depth of field on
and that
console
is
now.
that is on Switch, so you can turn it off on Switch and Switch 2.
Yeah, so that's really cool because I'm not a big fan of. I'm not usually a big fan of depth of field in general in games, but even more so in this game, which kind of blurs out a lot of like the edges. Which like I was like, I don't really like that stylistic choice. So it's cool to see that like you can now do that on consoles, not just on PC. Um, so and then other very like welcome quality of life stuff like, hey, when you're watering plants on as a farmer, you now there's like a 3x3 tile that you water over, and it had like a weird hitbox thing where you can only water like a certain number of tiles. Now, when you do it once over a field, you water over all of them instead of having to like kind of adjust your character and their angle of watering crops. So just could they continue to improve the game in small ways and not too far out of release as well. So they've
And they said that they're gonna keep doing free updates, and I wouldn't be shocked.
Yep.
Well, I would be shocked if we don't get like an expansion at this point. It
Yeah, I
seems
really
like inevitable.
I really wonder how what else they decide to do. I mean, it feels like the possibilities are endless with this kind of title. So we'll see what they do. I wonder if they'll expand the post game and see how that'll go. Just cool to see. Cool to see. I continue to root for this game.
Please no more shrines that have you jump on mushrooms. Please no more.
Dude, the way I did those, so there are some shrine types in this game where you have to remember like it's like basically Simon Says of like, hey, the mushrooms are gonna light up it's like it's a formation of like 8 mushrooms in a circle, and you have to remember the sequence of like when they were tapped, and then you have to repeat the sequence. um it's like Bop It. um so what I did was like I used Notepad and assigned a number to each of those mushrooms, and then I would just like type out the number whenever they highlighted. I would follow the number sequence that I wrote down. That's how I memorized them on that. But those are like always a bitch because sometimes the final trial of those is like it's like a 9 mushroom sequence.
Oh yeah,
And
I just did one that was like that. I was like, Jesus Christ.
yeah, they're pretty devious. Well, that was the way I handled it. But trying to remember it off of memory must be fucking hell. I can't do
Yeah.
that. I'm not smart enough. My memory isn't that good.
And then for some final couple dates, these were announcements at the Xbox showcase, but I think we kind of expected these. Final Fantasy 16 did launch for Xbox Series and on the Xbox app on PC. And then Final Fantasy 7 Remake Intergrade will be coming to the Xbox Series this winter. So following up on President Kiryu's, new stance on supporting more multiplayer releases, getting some of these previous exclusives, over to the Xbox ecosystem.
I
Uh,
wonder if the Switch 2 release and the Xbox Series release of FF7 Remake line up on the same day. 'Cause I believe they're both
Probably.
planned this way.
I wouldn't be shocked. It would make sense so they could save on marketing costs.
Yeah. But yeah, and I assume Rebirth will follow them, not too long after.
Yep.
Which does beg the question of like, where does the final part of FF7 trilogy remake land? Like in terms of like, is that like there's so many questions now with this expanded platforms. Is like, is it going to go like PS5 PC first, or are they going to follow this model like PS5 then PC then these platforms? It's like they have yet to reveal any of this, but I'm very curious to see how that shapes.
Both in terms of their new stance and just the reception for Rebirth wasn't bad, but it didn't light the world on fire. So
Yeah.
them maybe playing the cards closer to their chest in terms of a safer release might be to do PS5 PC first. Maybe we're not biz devs, so hard to say. It kind of depends on the
Yeah.
it kind of depends on what the offer is in terms of platform exclusivity and the financials. So no idea. We'll see.
Yeah, especially because even Sony themselves are like way more open to just launching on PS5 and PC simultaneously in terms of like
Yeah.
the new Marvel game, and yeah, I guess it's not really like and Helldivers, of course, but some of the more Sony first party stuff like Ghost of Yote and God of War obviously are staggered releases for them.
Dune Awakening is now available on Steam. A game that we've covered a little bit. I know Scott was interested in this and wrote a preview on it for the first few hours. But it's kind of a MMO survival-ish game now available. It will be coming to PlayStation and Xbox in 2026. And I'm just curious. Steam page is so far very positive with 20,000 reviews. So there you go. That's a lot of reviews. We have another indie RPG project has a new date. Wander Stars. This is a turn-based RPG based on like a '90s anime aesthetic. Will be launching on August 1st for PC and Switch. This reminds me vaguely of like the anime Windbreakers, just that kind of style. Even though that one's more of a contemporary art style. Clash of Heroes 3 Remaster will release on September 18th for PS5, Nintendo Switch, and Steam. And then a Clash of Heroes 1, 2, and 3 Remaster Collection will also be available physically for both consoles, at least in Japan, on the same date. I don't know if there's been any follow-up on a physical version of that being available in the West. And then in September, we have Blade and Soul Heroes, which is a free-to-play collectible action RPG. Will be launching in September for mobile and PC. For all of you Blade and Soul heads, in love with that IP, it'll be available in September.
There was something about this game that I was looking into at Summer Games Fest, and I totally forgot about. I think this was there's a game that also does like the hybrid turn-based and real-time thing that Metaphor and Daybreak is doing. I don't know how they're doing it, but they at least the press release was some way, shape, or form. They're doing this hybrid real-time combat and also turn-based combat shifting. So in an MMO form, I guess, which is weird. I think, but interesting.
I did not related to this, but it does remind me. One of my friends on Blue Sky apparently was going back to Metaphor,
Mhm.
and he was like, "Oh, the desire to try to parry or dodge. I wish I could do it." So, things like that.
Okay, I don't think this is MMO like Blade and Soul. I think it's just like a single player, but there's like but obviously you can like roll for characters and there's an online element because it makes contact. So yeah, that
So
was like
I'm not up to date on Blade and Soul, but like this has apparently characters from it, and then it says
yeah.
it will also debut the new character class Warlock for the
Let's
remaster
go.
Blade and Soul Neo.
Oh boy.
I'm not up to date on Blade and Soul and like where it's at and
Me
where it's
neither.
going, but
And it's one of those things that's like it's even more difficult because of the way that the Summer Games Fest stream decided to structure it, where like all of these free to play open world anime games were like just played trailers back to back to back to back, and you're like, what the fuck are any of these games like? I feel a little bit bad if I was like the developer of these games because they all play together like in their own block, and it's like hard to distinguish them from one another at times when you're just like watching that stream for however many
It was like
You
a
know,
weird situation because it made it easy for people that maybe weren't interested in that stuff to just like tune it out. And it's like, that's not
it's like, all
good.
right,
If I
yeah,
was one of those developers, like I'd be actually upset.
yeah. So it was kind of a weird decision. The way they kind of almost put them in their own isolation zone, their own containment.
Apparently, Blade and Soul Neo just released a couple days ago, or
Mhm.
10 days ago, so last couple of weeks, to mostly negative response. So,
Log in.
mhm. Relive the iconic tale, fully remastered, where you can reconnect with the original spirit of the free-to-play open world MMORPG.
What the fuck does that mean? You
I'm
can
like,
reconnect with the spirit?
that's what it says.
With the spirit of the I love that actually. The more you think about it, the stupider it sounds. You can reconnect with the spirit of the original MMORPG. Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
So that tells me it has nothing to do with the original, and it's just being like, if you squint your eyes, it looks similar.
I'm
That
reconnecting with the
reminds me
spirit.
of our Blue Protocol. What is it? What isn't it?
Yeah,
Stuff from a month
they should
ago.
have
That
that in
was
the
a
they should put that in the description of that. You can reconnect with the spirit of this MMO that never came out of this territory. That's awesome.
So obviously, thank you so much, Josh, Adam, and James, for carrying the weight of the podcast here on your Summer Games Fest, your experience, your trip to LA, handling the real world events going on at the same time, all of the writing that you guys have all done over the last week. We have like a dozen plus articles up on the site of previews, and a couple
And
reviews up
more to
on the site,
come.
all coming out of Summer Games Fest. Obviously, it was cool just to represent the site. You got to meet up with Alex, you got to meet up with Scott, you got to meet up with contemporaries from other sites over there. Uh, Obviously, we have more to talk about once some embargoes lift in the upcoming weeks. We were looking forward to a suddenly very packed August, September timeframe. Sorry, September, October timeframe. A lot of games coming down the pipe, a lot of surprises like Owlcat's new title, and things like that. That all of a sudden are just beyond the horizon. Not to be corny about it, but
But also like a special thank you to everyone who contributed to like keeping up with the news during SGF and that whole time frame, to Mikhail,
yeah,
Kite, and others who
Yeah,
helped out.
seriously.
Like it's a fucking it was a massive team effort and massive undertaking to kind of just catch up on and keeping in line with like the whole the pace of announcements throughout all of this entire season is always hectic, chaotic. So I can't express enough how grateful I am for the team members that helped out during this time.
Yep. So I've already called it out, but just go to rpgsite.net, click articles if you want the preview, click news if you just want the trailers and the headlines. Obviously, a whole team came together to put that all together, and get that all written up, all the entities updated, all the release dates put on the sidebar and everything like that. All the platforms now that we have the Switch 2 in the mix of everything releasing and keeping tabs on what's releasing at what time, worldwide, region specific, all that stuff. It's a lot of work keeping it all straight. If you listen to this podcast on any podcast service of choice, give us a like, give us a rating. We love to see those. You can find RPG Site on all the social media networks. Just search for RPG Space Site, and you should be able to find us. On the site side post for any of these Tetracast episodes, we also give the Blue Sky address for all the participants. So go ahead and give us a follow if you'd like. Join the Discord, discord.gg/RPG Site. It's been growing in activity over the year, so go ahead and join that if you're so inclined. And stay tuned for next week for all the upcoming previews, and of course for the next episode of the Tetracast as we wrap into more releases that are coming out in as we get into the middle of June. So until you hear from us next time, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you all next week.